again.
I'd like to convene the meeting of the Board of Directors of the Menlo Park Fire Protection District Board at 7:03. Roll call, please. Director Bernstein?
Present.
Director Bloom?
I am present by Zoom and participating remotely under the Brown Act's Just Cause exemption because I'm ill and I don't want to infect anybody else. And I can confirm nobody is in the room with me.
Thank you. Director Jones?
I am here.
Director Crawley? Present. Director Swan?
Here.
Okay. If we can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So there are no reports or actions from closed session, which we shall adjourn at 6:20 tonight. And I'll open up public comment number 1. So this is an opportunity for members of the public who would like to make a comment on items that are not on the agenda. So if you would like to do so, this is the time. I don't see anyone in the room who would like to do it. So anyone online? Okay, then I'll close public comment number 1. And let's go to the chief's report.
Thank you, Director Crawley, members of our board, members of the community that are here, and our staff, and members that are online via Zoom. Happy to give you an update on what's going on in the district with the fire chief's report. First is just a quick facilities update. Station 4, I just drove by there the other day, and all of the concrete in the back is down. They're finishing up a few additional touches on it, and it is our plan to have our October board meeting at Fire Station 4 and christen 2 of our new fire apparatus there, and maybe even have a little ribbon cutting ceremony at the same time. Then separately from that, we will have an open house on a weekend day, so all the public can come in. So really excited for us to have our next board meeting there. Station 3 auxiliary building is coming along very nicely. The anticipated completion is in November, but it is up out of the ground. It's got siding on it. There, it looks like you're going to put on a scratch coat pretty quickly. Roof is on and complete. They'll be working on the insides only pretty shortly. So that is coming along quickly. The Station 1 design, nothing to report out at the moment. We were going to have an item on the board agenda related to awarding a contract for an architect. We have some we have to go back a little bit and review the way the contract's written, just to make sure it checks all of our legal boxes, and then we'll be back to the board in October with that item. Recruitment and hiring update. As far as the firefighter recruitment goes, we have selected or given job offers, contingent job offers to 7 candidates to start in January. They are currently in backgrounds. We also have 4 alternate candidates that are also going to go through the background process in case somebody gets hired away or falls out. But really good group of individuals. Really impressed with the quality of candidates that we got through the newer process. The community risk reduction officer that position was flown. We had 29 applicants that closed last Thursday or Friday. We're going to be pinning the group down and doing interviews the week of September 27th. The battalion chief's test is in process. We have 9 internal applicants for that. The written exam will be September 27th. So good things going on internally with us with recruitment and hiring and promotional updates. Other items, just an update on our community engagement unit and the activities going on there. Our programs continue to be incredibly popular. A lot of that has to do with the outreach from John and Heather and the team. We just had a full class, 20 community members graduated the CERT program on September 16th. In addition to our regular instructors, we also had some of our newest CERT instructors, Chief Johnston being one was there, Mental Health Police Chief, Dave Norris was there, and one of his officers also came, so everybody was very appreciative of all the great classes we gave. We're continuing our monthly first aid, stop the bleed, CPR, Red Cross Ready, and those are at capacity every time we put them out, so which is great. We're just gonna keep adding more and more classes. We also have one more bilingual community member from East Palo Alto who signed up to participate in our Listos Train the Trainer. That's a community preparedness for Spanish speakers, which is great outreach for us. Super excited about that. And then our team had a cert booth at Saturday's East Palo Alto Music Festival and handed out a lot of information. And we had some firefighter crews also rotate through that site. Data analytics. So I specifically put a bullet point under the fire chief's report in case there's questions or discussion on the data, so we can comply with the Brown Act and notice the public that we might have this discussion on this. What I will preface this with is that there's a couple, I think, 6 or 8 reports in there and also some corrected reports. I'll go through them and share with you what we're trying to show with these. What I will also share in advance is we have been considering hiring a professional consultant that does data analytics to do this report for us monthly. And we decided we were gonna give it a good try and see if we couldn't produce the reports internally. And what we've decided is that we're gonna leave it to the professionals, and so hopefully next month's report, we're gonna hire a group called FireStats that professionally do this, and they can extract the data, make our reports look professional, readable, and we'll share them with the board every month. We'll actually post them up on our website under the transparency page. That's the intent, but what I will share with you is what we have right now. And if I can start with, it's gonna start with the heat map. It's on page 5 of your board packet.
Chief, we have a pack, we have it in our packet, we have one
Yes.
here.
Yeah, we have it as a.
Is this superseded or are they the same?
These are, it looks like Michelle put together a complete corrected packet, so we can ignore what's in the packet and go with it. So I'll explain.
I'll share with them.
Oh, thank you, Michelle.
That's perfect. So I'll explain, ultimately, what we're gonna do is just visually, that first page there is what we call our heat map. We will include this as part of our future packet. It might be visually displayed differently, but really what this does is it gives you a good visual indication of where the majority of our calls are in the district. We had to report it as just a single month of August in this case here. And this was, again, helpful in our decision to go with the professional data analytics person. When we did that entire year, it just turned into a giant red blob that wasn't very useful. So we narrowed it to a month. It gives us a good indication of where our call volumes, the majority of our calls are. It just gives a good visual display of where the majority of our calls are. As you can see, East Palo Alto is super busy. No surprise, since Station 2 is our busiest of the 7 stations. On the next page. Sure.
On the first page, could you explain, so I assume the red is hotspot.
Right.
And then the yellow around the red?
Yeah, so it goes down from, and we will also have a, what's the term, key, a legend on all of these that will explain that. But yes, it goes from hot, yellow is cooler, to green, which is cooler, to blue, the coolest, and obviously if there's no colors, then very low number of calls. Okay. That we'll have a legend on our future report set.
Okay, and so it just, so if I look at, say, for example, East Palo Alto, so the red, for example, there would not be any underlaying kind of area, blue or something like that, yellow underneath?
There might be some particular addresses. I mean, it doesn't get down into that level of detail, but there's probably some areas in East Palo Alto that have no calls, and it might be just a vacant field or something like that. But there's 2 different ways you can display this data. It's, it can be displayed as a circle with a number of calls in it, and there can be a bunch of circles, or you can do it as a heat map that just visually shows you a little bit better where those calls are. You'll see in future reports, we'll probably also display something like this. in the form of a table that shows the number of calls that Station 2 has responded to over the course of the year and the last month. We'll provide a variety of different ways to display the data that will be helpful for people.
Great, great.
The next page there, which is a pie chart, just breaks down our number of calls that we have. This is year to date from January 1st through the date that Chief McDonald pulled the data. Just breaks out, our calls based on call type. Again, what ultimately we'll have is something similar to this, and it will be a little bit easier to read. It will be a pie chart. It will probably be displayed, in a portrait mode. We'll have a pie chart on top, and then underneath this, we'll have an easy to read table with color keys. It will show the type of call and the number of calls associated with it.
Overall, as a district or?
Yeah, as a district.
By,
For right now, it'll be as a district. If the board has a desire for us to break it down by station and sector, we can do that. So we'll be able to, you'll see as we start presenting the report, hopefully next month, there'll be a lot of opportunities for input, and if there's a desire from the board to increase it or expand it and find ways that, it's gonna be a work in progress for, over the next year, as we kind of figure out which data is important. Yes, sir.
Are these titles or these types of calls, is this what the district uses or was this imposed?
That's great, and that's a great question, because I asked the same question. It is based on the National Fire Incident Reporting System, NFIRS, that's how we report it, that's how they're coded, and the data is pulled off of our NFIRS form. So we may end up combining some of them. If you look, well, first of all, as you can see, you have a couple categories in there that say 0%, which is always, we may increase the decimal point, we may combine some of the calls together, so it makes more sense for the public, when you have a good intent call versus a false alarm, what's the difference, between them? A lot of it's subjective between the company officer coding it in a certain way.
What is a good intent call?
The good intent calls are, for example, things that are dispatched and canceled en route, wrong location with no emergency found. Could be a controlled burning situation. It could be steam that was mistaken for smoke. You'll have that in some industrial areas. EMS call where the party was transported by a family member. So those are calls that are legitimate calls with good intentions. False alarms can be malicious, alarm pulls. Can be a system malfunction, unintentional system operations, things like that.
What does a service call mean?
Service calls can be like a lockout, if somebody's locked out of their car. Sometimes we get called on ring removals, believe it or not. If somebody has a ring stuck on their finger, we can cut it off.
wow.
The ring, not the finger.
Not the
Not
alarm, public
amputation,
security
yeah.
system,
Not
right?
the finger, no, let's not do that.
Service calls can also be water problems. If, we'll get called on, come do a water back if somebody's water heater breaks. Animal problems, there could be, I don't know if there's raccoons here, but if you have a raccoon in your house, you call the fire department, that's a service call. Sometimes a lot of them are lift assists with elderly patients or invalids where, their partner just can't get them back in bed, so we go out and do a service call.
And then what's a special incident type?
Special incident type, how many do we have of those? 9. 4%, yeah, our special, it says citizen complaints is the only thing that's noted there. So it could be a call for somebody doing illegal burning in the backyard, where you get a citizen complaint, or somebody blocking a fire hydrant, or, you fill in the blank for a citizen complaint.
I see.
So, so now we collect the data,
Yeah.
we put them in category. What is the next step? How's the
Sure.
data being analyzed for some type of corrective action from the district?
So you'll see, some of the data here will just be to share what we did and tell a story, right? So that's what some of the data is gonna do. Some of it is, you'll see a little bit later on, is gonna help us maybe make some decisions. Do we have adequate staffing? Are our fire stations placed in the right places? You know, are there things that we can do to improve? You know, a lot of it's response time. Those are the things that are gonna drive us. There'll be probably some other data that we'll end up sharing that will display, you know, our call volumes by date and time of the week. Like, do we have some trends to follow? Are we finding that, you know, at certain times of the day, we're having challenges responding to calls because all of our engines are busy? You know, how many, you know, there's some unit utilization metrics and standards that we can use to determine, you know, the busyness of our companies for making decisions about needing staff. Some of it will just point us to, you know, the questions about our travel times during the time of day. Do we have traffic issues that we just, you know, that are causing us some problems? Is there some, that can cause us to evaluate whether there's something we can do related to it? None of these are displayed here. You'll see in some of the later data. But this here just really is kind of a workload thing to show the public and the board and anybody else that's interested. In general, what do we do? You know, 57% of our calls are medical calls. All right, and then what do we do the rest of the time? So
The reason I asked the question is just trying to understand whether they're sitting in parallel lines or intersecting lines between what we do here at the district and how it may impact other agencies, other services within the community, with some of the data that's showing up here. You know, and I don't know, it just kind of seemed like there might be,
right,
but I haven't really analyzed it to that extent yet. So I'm just wanting to know.
and I don't know. I guess that's the answer. My guess is there probably is some connection. I'm not sure what the correlations are.
Okay.
We can figure those out.
Yeah.
On the next page, this is the question that we've been asking about, how is the public safety communication center doing? So PSAP to alarm bend in 5-second intervals. Let me explain the title first. And we'll probably have titles that are a little bit more user-friendly for lay people. The PSAP is our public safety answering point. That is PSC, if everyone knows what that is, at the San Mateo Communication Center. So the PSAP to alarm is what we're measuring here is, and this is actually the fire public safety answering point. When they get the call in there, when it's transferred from PD, what we're measuring is from the time they receive it to the time they tone us out or bring us down or the tones go off at the fire station. So, and the bend in 5-second intervals is just, we put all of the different data into 5-second groupings so that it's, you know, you can have a smaller number of categories in 5-second intervals. So if it's, you know, 6 to 10 seconds, if you have 7 seconds, it will fit in that bin, if that makes sense.
Oh, but that's what, it's in a bin, is that the idea?
That's what that's what the term that's being used. I hadn't heard it before, but I think this is the report title that's pushed out by the continuing program that we have. So we'll put it into a little bit more user-friendly terms. This here is what I refer to as a histogram. I like these. We're going to use these a lot because when we just provide, you can see up here we have the average time it takes in the dispatch was 1 minute and 53 seconds, and at the 90th percentile is 2 minutes and 35 seconds. And what that, without the histogram here, you can't really see where the curve is. And you'll see as we look at some of our other charts here, the curve is different. So the majority of the calls are at the very far left of the curve, right? And so a lot of those things are getting processed pretty quickly. Yeah, you can see where the curve kind of slopes down pretty significantly about the mid 115 to 125 area. Just let you see the majority of the time, they're actually getting these calls out pretty quickly. And at the 90th percentile, you can see that there's a very small number of calls that get stretched way out over a longer period of time. But this, again, this is not something we have control over, this is PSC's performance. Yes, Director Solano.
Chief, as to the, when they receive the call, dispatcher puts the call out. Is there that, I know there is a breakdown where it's a one point, what was it? There with the actual dispatch time before the actual engine company receives it and goes into action. Should we be penalized for that time period, even though it's part of the process, but, if OES takes a longer time in order to dispatch our vehicles, they're still responding within a reasonable amount of time because they're the recipient of the call. So if it takes a longer time for dispatch in order to process that call, it's part of the process of getting those emergency calls out, but we should not be penalized for that time period. Do you understand what I'm saying? That it's part of their process could be at issue by dispatching a call for service for someone who calls in. And then we get the call. It could be a minute, it could be 2 minutes, it could be 3 minutes. As what I experienced today, 9/11 had a busy signal where they couldn't, it was an accident on 101. But those are things that emergency service vehicles should not be penalized for, even though it's a processing issue by them, giving us the calls for service.
You're right. We have, probably the only metric that we actually are held to right now is the one that county EMSA holds us to, and that's that 6 minute and 59-second response time for our medical calls. And fortunately for us, they leave the PSC number out of the equation, right? So it's just measuring our turnout time and our travel time in order to meet that metric. We're not penalized or anything by things that we don't have control over. I will share with you on find it, many pages. So just so you're aware, and it just depends on how many different things we measure. The item here on PSCs that is included in your packet, it is initially displaying all calls. So this is, they have type 1, priority 1, 2, and 3. So in the future, priority 2 and priority 3 calls, like, are calls that can be held in the queue for a long time. They're super low priority calls. What we probably will measure is priority 1 call times. And I just wanted to share with you, because I had asked PSC to provide me with data, and then I cross-referenced it to the data that Aaron pulled. And if we provided a chart, which we have not, that only had priority 1 calls in it, the priority 1 calls, which are typically our code 3 calls, the average time is 1 minute and 10 seconds. And at the 90th percentile, it's 1 minute and 53 seconds. So their performance is much better on the priority 1 code 3 calls than what we're currently displaying. And then again, this is why, we have quite a bit to work through. There's so many different ways to display the data. And this is also why we're going to be working with that professional statistician on how to properly display it, things, and to also offer with each one of our charts what it is we're measuring, what the criteria is. If there's a standard or a metric that we can apply to it, we'll show it, and also giving an explanation to anyone that's reading it about why that's important to us.
Is there a breakdown by AMR?
Oh,
I think Director Blue,
Sure.
just have here, or is this a follow-up to this?
I just want to follow up with AMR's response.
Okay, and then Gary after.
With the actual medical call per se. One of our engines are on the scene and then AMR shows up. Is there any comparison relative to the, do we show up first? Do they show up first? I know they're in the transportation mode, for us, but who gets there first and what's,
Okay.
you know, do we have that data?
Well, I don't know if we have, or we haven't measured AMR's performance. I know the county EMS agency measures their performance. All we're measuring here is from when our unit is first licensed.
Only us,
Yes.
okay.
It's
Not our
it's
support.
possible that AMR could get there before us. You know, in most cases, we usually get there before the ambulance.
Alright.
And we also, you know, by our contract with, through the AMR contract, we give them, it allows them an additional, I think, 6 minutes, you know, because we are putting ALS first responders on scene, yeah. So, I think Director Bloom had a
Yeah,
question.
Carrie?
That would be something I would be interested in.
Okay, I'll see if we can get
Thank
it.
you.
So my question goes back to this bend in 5-second intervals. So clearly priority one is the key thing we should be measuring. So I like that you're getting the data bifurcated, because I think us measuring 2 and 3 that they're putting in a queue doesn't really tell us all that much. But priority one, which is, as you said, typically the code 3 calls, yeah, that's clearly what we want to measure. I'm curious though, is there a service level agreement that we have with dispatch, or that dispatch has a service level agreement with the various fire agencies that says how fast their goal is to dispatch an engine or dispatch a fire unit? In other words, it's one thing to say I think you said it was 1 minute 5 seconds or something for priority one. Yeah, that's great. But if their goal was 45 seconds,
Right.
that's also interesting.
I don't know if they have internal goals or if we have a contractual relationship with them that requires that. What is interesting, I do know the NFPA recommends that for dispatches, that, you know, the ones we're talking about here, that they hit the 60-second mark 90% of the time.
Yeah.
Right? So, but I think what you'll see, and as I share some of our data too, I'm not throwing any shade on PSC. The NFPA standards for response times are almost unachievable. And, but I will get that question answered on what their dispatch metrics are. I'm sure they have internal standards that they're trying to meet, and I'll find out, and we will also share those, especially if we're gonna be displaying this data, right?
Yeah, just as a general rule, you know, this is all really helpful data, and I think it will take the board 2 or 3 iterations of working with you once you get the more professional reports, before the board helps calibrate what's the most important things to look at, because we could basically drown ourselves in reports and learn nothing, or we can pick the 8 or 10 things that really matter and measure them pretty religiously and measure them against goals and everything. But wherever you have either an internal goal that's our goal, or a contractual goal with somebody else, or a service level goal of theirs, wherever we have those, if we can show those on the charts, that's very helpful to, you know, because otherwise it's just, you know, it's hard to tell even as a fire board member, you know, if I look at the current chart, it's 1 minute 53, well, is that good or is that bad? It's really well, how does it stand up against the goal that makes it good or bad? Is how well are we doing against what we plan to do? And so I would just encourage wherever we can to add in, you know, kind of items that show what the actual goal is that we're trying to attain, because that will help keep the board and the public focused on, you know, on kind of what the data means.
So yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. And let me just, real quickly, part of what you're seeing here is a little bit of the making of the sausage, you know, as we're going through it, but
No,
Yeah,
this
rather
is a
than-
great first step.
yeah, it's really one of those things where rather than saying next month, I'll get it to you, or it's like, I just wanted to share with you what we have right now. My ultimate goal is once we have really good data and displays, actually to sit down, maybe it's in a special study session, and come up with some internal metrics that our board would approve for what our goals are. I think the only formally approved metric we have is the one that's placed on us by the county EMS agency of 659. There's been lots of conversations in our standards of coverage studies about things that we should try and do, but I don't know if the board has said, here, this is our metric, let's try and meet it. Yes, sir, Director Bernstein.
Well, let me answer what you just said. When data was presented to us in the past, and Don Long was the most recent presentation, They did include dispatch, and dispatch was allocated 1 minute, and that 1 minute was part of the 7-minute total response time. So that was, I don't know if the board ever voted on it, but that was the measure that we were supposedly trying to attain.
And that's one of those things where I talk about unattainable NFPA standards. You know, we can have those as we could just adopt them across the board. The likelihood is that we would never be successful in measuring those. And in reviewing some of the sample reports that this consultant provided, is I see a number of agencies actually displaying the NFPA metrics, but like a 60-second turnout time, and they hit it 23% of the time. I just don't know. You can certainly compare yourself to the NFPA. I don't know that it's reasonable to say that's our goal if it's no longer realistic. And a lot of my experience with NFPA standards is some of them, a lot of them are not necessarily scientific. A lot of them have been driven by some labor influences and a variety of things. And I think it's important for a jurisdiction to figure out, what can they, with us, with our traffic issues, with our topography and our geography, what do we think is reasonable for our people to be able to drive to? Do we want to triple the number of stations we have so we can meet NFPA's 5-minute response time standard? Is that prudent? Are we good stewards? Or, but all those things, but it would be good for us to have a conversation and figure out, and also, what's the outcome if we don't meet NFPA standards? Are fires growing exponentially out of control, or are people not getting, adequate medical care? Trying to figure out, like I said, the outcome-based metrics rather than just a super even 5-minute metric, which that doesn't feel scientific on the surface.
Let me ask the question I was originally going to ask, and that is, can you tell us what is the beginning point of what's timed here?
Are you talking about the alarm piece after alarm?
Yes.
The clock starts when the call gets transferred from police dispatch to fire dispatch.
Oh my goodness, so this doesn't even include all that 2 minutes?
We don't know what it is. It's interesting, we've been having conversations. We had a joint meeting with police and fire chiefs 2 months ago. We were talking about just that, trying to figure out if there's a way we could measure that. The police chiefs feel like it's very, very quick. For us, we don't always know. Sometimes it feels like for us very slow. We don't have a way to measure that. I haven't found somebody who has a way to measure that yet, but we were talking to them about trying to figure out if there's a way where we could connect our CAD systems together so they can talk. And there's technology available to be able to do it so that we can start measuring that, and also figure out if there's a way we can leverage technology to improve our response times.
So when it leaves a police agency, and that's when the clock starts.
Yes.
And then when does the clock stop on this?
As soon as the tones, or they hit dispatch, or the tones, basically it's simultaneous, when they go off in the fire station. Right, so from the time the dispatcher picks up the call, usually they're trying to get an address and phone number, and then populate the call with resources, and then they hit, I'm just gonna say they hit go. That's probably not technically right. That's when that time stops.
That's when you start.
And then the next time starts is now it's what we call our shoot time or our turnout time, right? From when you get that call to when you get on your proper PPE, look at the map, do whatever you need to do, run down the stairs. I don't know. It depends on what you're doing, if you're at an inspection. So it's a time from when the tones go off and notifying them that they have a call to when they push and route on the mobile status terminal.
Okay.
So understand, Chief, that this time is when the call comes in. At this minute and 53 seconds, I'm looking at the alarm 5-second intervals. So the call comes in, so a minute and 53 seconds, I guess the average, that's when they call us? Is that how it's working?
That is the average amount of time it takes from when they pick up the phone to when our alarms are going off at the fire station.
So then there's another time frame between time we leave the door, leave out the door, the time we get.
Yes, and you'll see we are measuring that in here too.
Okay.
And it all adds up to, like, if you're on the other end of the phone and you have an emergency, and it's feeling like it takes a long time for people to get there, this is all of those different things that are happening in order to get people there.
My God,
Yeah.
what, I mean, when you get out to 2 minutes and 35 seconds and beyond, what they doing?
I know, you know, well, part of that is, and again, in all fairness to them, on the code 1 or code 3 calls, the highest level, it's the actual, at the 90th percentile, it's a minute 50. And the average is a minute thing, so it's a little bit quicker on those high priority calls.
Right.
It's quicker than what's on the chart.
So,
That's what will be on the next chart.
so relating back to the pie chart, this is what I'm trying to, this is the correlation between that and the pie chart, whatever that is, in terms of being able to kind of understand if it's not a code 1, it may be a code 2.
Sure.
Then I assume that it takes a little
Like a
bit.
public service call, it's not gonna be a priority 1.
Maybe
Like that's my water heater busted, everything's getting wet, right? Not a priority 1 code 3 call.
For the dog, the tree.
Right.
Right.
Right,
Well,
we
the
don't
ring has to get
send,
cut
we
off.
don't send an engine, lights and sirens on a call like that. You know, it's that, evaluate the risk with, you know, going through lights and stuff on something that's, no one's gonna use it.
So all these codes all these activities here, from fire down to special incident type, I assume that there are probably variations in response time to
Yes.
each one.
Yes, and some of those in those categories are gonna be a combination of code 3 calls, where you're going lights and sirens, and some won't. And it just depends, because if you go on a good intent call, where somebody sees steam, we're gonna assume it's a fire and go code 3. There might be some other good intent calls where we don't. It just,
Depends on the situation.
okay, on to,
You know, Robert, I was just going to mention
Oh,
that.
Karen?
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to mention, I've had the chance in the past in prior life with search and rescue to listen in when they're taking these calls, where you're actually sitting next to the dispatcher with a headset on and hearing what they're going through. And when I see kind of a minute 5 for priority 1 or a minute 53 for the collection of them, when you think about the amount of time it takes just to get, when somebody's got a lot of anxiety on the other end, just to get their address and get a valid callback phone number, deal with communications issues, if it's a cell, if it's coming in on a cell phone now and a bad connection, you take all that in and you say, they've got quite a bit of information they have to collect before they can, and they're typing it simultaneously while they're collecting it, to then push the button and say, okay, now tone out a particular engine to process it. So, one of the things that, and this is why I was saying earlier, I think it's important to know what goal they're trying to meet for their time, because that's going to factor in what I think is, the practical reality of how long does it take you to collect enough information to dispatch an engine. But it's, if you think about it, when you pick up the phone, time's a ticking from the second you connect, but it might take you a while as the person calling to actually give them the information they need to be able to dispatch. And that's all part of that time. So it's not as though they're just collecting information and then when they get around to their queue, pushing a button and toning out the engine. I think most of the time is consumed with the actual collecting of information to be able to properly dispatch a unit with enough information so that the fire unit going knows what they're responding to.
Rob?
Joe, is there a way we can have county communications come here and give us a presentation from with their process? They get the call, they disseminate the call to whatever agency to go through their processes and what their policy and procedures are and their training function, how they train their dispatchers to take those calls. Because there's a lot of subjection here, like, Gary saying, well, maybe this, maybe, to get them in here and do a presentation for us.
yeah, I guess I can. My general experience has been with them, they're really willing to do things.
I'm sure they would come here and do the presentation since they are serving us as our communication dispatch services. So I'd like that seat.
I mean, if the board wants that, then you might want to reach out to whoever at the county and then, you know, if it's in October or November, you know, whatever their availability is. That's a great suggestion. Thank you.
I've been at many presentations that they've given about their processes. They do a really nice job. And to the chief's point, my experience in the past is they've always been more than willing to come do those kinds of presentations. So, you know, good suggestion. It'd definitely be productive for everybody.
Sure.
do you know, I don't know if this is a state mandated thing or if the county has done it. At what level was it decided that the police would get the call first?
I don't know, it's interesting because you raised that question in a meeting prior about why. I don't know where, I have to ask another question. I was searching on the internet to see why it always goes to police, right? That's just the default agency, is it goes to some law enforcement agency when you dial 911. I don't know.
I think the whole subject of what Rob and Gary were talking about, I think this whole thing needs to be reimagined, and particularly with artificial intelligence and all that. It just seems that we could do much, much faster.
Right.
And then actually be creating programs where we teach people how to call 911 and what they need to be prepared to say, and teach it in schools and so
Well,
forth.
we have done that before, in our survival lighthouse.
And
But
I
that
think
was
there's-
20 years ago, so.
Virginia?
Yes.
I'm gonna say, you know, I've started in public safety in 1973 with 3x5 cards, where they would call the dispatcher, there'd be a complaint officer, that would take the call and they'd pass it to a dispatcher, the dispatcher put the call out. And I think it worked better. I mean, I hate to say that, but 50 years is a long time, but with these lulls and stuff, it was kind of like from the source to whoever dispatched the call. I mean, that's why I would really like to see how OES does this, how our county communications does this. And then the software stuff, between the tablet and that VeriSign or wherever it is that they're using, that's not compatible with what we're doing. There's just a lot of questions I have. And a lot of other people have mentioned it to me, and, it's kind of like, I don't think we're getting the services that we really should get from the county. I think it's more parallel to law enforcement than it is to fire. And, fire is just as important as law enforcement. So I kind of take offense to some of that.
So we're gonna bring them in.
So let's bring them
We're
in.
gonna bring them
I've got a whole bunch of questions.
So-
I'll prepare them in advance.
in. Okay, so.
Yeah, I would just caution jumping to the conclusion that we're not getting what we're anticipating, until which time we're actually adequately measuring the data, which is what this process the chief's going through, and then compare the data that we're measuring against the goals or the agreements that we have or don't have with them. Because it could be a lack of agreement that we don't have agreed to goals, and we haven't as an organization been measuring it either. So to me, this is the right next productive step for us, which is collecting the data, measuring the data, reporting on the data, seeing what the data tells us, and then drawing conclusions based on that information. And I would just, I'd offer the additional cautionary note, these are all preliminary charts.
Right.
Yeah, this is a first pass. As the chief said, you're seeing the sausage being made here. Data analytics, I've done this for my career. It's not an easy process. The data quality, you have to kind of filter through all the data quality issues before you can actually get high quality reports. And I think the chief bringing in a third-party vendor to assist with the reporting and starting this process and sharing data is really productive for us. But I would just caution the entire board about drawing any conclusions until which time we have data that's pretty refined and accurate, because we do risk the danger if we jump to conclusions too fast, is that our conclusions simply get impeached by better data. And I'd rather get the better data first and then make conclusions and be able to defend them with the data and with the reports that we're generating. So that's just my kind of data science monologue that I would give as the cautionary tale coming out of that industry.
Yeah, I agree. Hold on, because I agree, and that's why I think having them come in, OES come in to talk about their process is additional data that we can get straight
Completely
from
agree.
them. Yeah,
Completely.
Rob,
Well, from the aspect of the data part, okay? I dialed 911 today, okay, and I got a busy signal, okay? I called Menlo Park PD Hardline emergency number, and I said, I want to report an accident on 101, 3 cars involved, look like injuries. She said, I'll transfer you to the highway patrol. I said, I was just on the phone with the highway patrol, and it was a busy signal, okay? So data's data, realistic,
real life.
actually an incident, reporting incident, that I finally got, the highway patrol called me back when I was home, okay? So I don't consider that good service.
So,
So all this data, it looks good, right up until you throw the cat on the table, okay? And just my experience today, I'm a believer, get these people in here. I've got a whole bunch of questions for them.
So that is the next step, so do you wanna
So,
finish this part?
yes, and then I would just share with you, my plan is, when I initially got the response time data from PSC, I looked at it, the first thing I did was call the fire chief in my last agency and say, hey, can you send me your metrics we had at dispatch center? And I'm like, oh, those are really different. I wonder what their processes are. So I'm gonna go do a sit-along over there and actually try and understand. Because when you look at our total response times, the 3 pieces are this dispatch time, the turnout time, and the travel time. The 2 areas we can shorten processes on, hopefully, are turnout and dispatch, right? Figure out how can we make it quicker? What is it that we can do so that we can, while we're still gathering information from the person, we can launch the engines and everybody can move on their way while we're doing concurrent processes, right? That's the key, is figure out where we can, instead of doing it like this, figure out how we can shorten it up. So that's my plan, and then I will also go find out for myself about what their internal processes are. I don't want to come in and be the guy that says, well, we did it this way, that never goes over well. But looking, and just asking some questions.
Sounds like a good plan.
So just to wrap up that part, for presentation purposes, we're gonna contact OES, and I just wanna make sure that we're all in agreement that we want them to come in and do a presentation based on Rob's suggestion as to their process, right? Okay, Chuck, did you have a?
Yeah, I was just curious, Chief, this seems like such a important area and something where people should be looking at it. Are you aware, are there conferences going on where dispatch is discussed, or is this?
I would imagine, our dispatch center is, I don't remember what the term is, it's certified or whatever, so they're very proud of that. I know they have best practices and, Chief Quill and I went to the accreditation conference in January to try and steal some good ideas from them, where they talk, the discussions about data are exhaustive, as far as what they're measuring and all the different pieces, so. Not everybody though, so I don't know, what the interest is in San Mateo County. I asked at our recent county chiefs meeting, just whether any of our agencies within San Mateo County actually have internal metrics that they use. And asked the fire chiefs just to contact me individually if they have some. I haven't heard back. I don't know that means there aren't any, but,
The big black box, seems to be like the police departments. They get a call, how many people do they have answering? What do they do with their calls? How long do they sit on it? Do they even keep track of what time they come in?
Well,
And nobody knows anything about them, and that to me is a huge, and they're the key to the whole thing.
We'll find out.
yes,
Yeah.
lots to go.
Okay, thanks,
The
Mark.
calls are into
So
the police
strategic
department.
plan
I can
update?
be dispatched from that.
Oh, are you done with your data analytics?
I can quickly go
Okay,
through the
perfect.
remaining slides.
Okay, perfect.
That's a good question.
So just to move us along, I know, we've spent a lot of time on this already. The next slide, just to share with you, is our shoot times, that's our turnout times, right, that we've been talking about. Again, this is one of the things that NFPA recommends that we get out within 60 seconds, 90% of the time. As you can see by our, at the 90th percentile, it's 249, so it creates some questions. What's causing us well, I don't think the NFPA standard's reasonable, but it would be great for us to have a reasonable standard and figure out, how quickly should our folks be able to get out? And that's, again, the shoot time is from the time the tones go off to the time they hit en route on the engine. And then the next piece is the travel time. Oh, again, I love the histograms here. Just a quick comment on the shoot times. You can see where the data is. You look over there and you've got 334 calls in the bin that's titled 0000. That's because we're driving around and we got an EMS call and we hit en route and we're on the way as you get dinged out. So it falls in that 0.5 second number. But like I said, histograms also paint a story. The next slide is our travel times. We don't have a whole lot of control over that. We don't necessarily want to tell our folks to drive faster. This is just the amount of time it takes us from when we hit en route to when we hit on scene. And it just, it gives us an indication of what our spacing is, whether our stations are properly spaced. We can break it down by sector, which is useful, so that we can see if we have one station that's not meeting its metrics here, kind of thing. Sometimes it's a station 2, and they might be in the best place in the world, but they might be so busy that they need another unit or something like that. So the data can point us to a couple of different conclusions. And then the final one was just a total response time. It's a combination of our shoot time and our travel time together. I'm measuring on this page, just fire engines and just medical calls. This is what EMS is holding us responsible for. The metric that we're held accountable to, the contract, is 6 minutes and 59 seconds at the 90th percentile. You can see here, based on the data, we're at 6:51, so we're in compliance. But yeah, this is, the response time really that matters is not just this one, it's the cumulative response time from the dispatcher picking it up to the time we get on scene. That's what the public experiences when they dial in.
So are you saying that the total response takes into consideration, you say the shoot time?
Yes.
So if I were to say, okay, the shoot time is in 90 percentile, 2 minutes and 49 seconds, and then we add the 6 minutes and 51 seconds in the 90 percentile, you said that includes the shoot time?
So, let me see if I can explain this. So yes, it includes it. The numbers, you can't take the 90th percentile at travel time only and shoot time only and expect it to be the 90th percentile, because the data points become different when you combine them. But yes, it's those two groups combined together. And when you combine the data sets, your 90th percentile and your average will change slightly.
So getting back to the dispatchers, that time is not included.
It's not currently measured by EMSA. We could have a metric that measures that. We just, but it's, we don't have control over the dispatch function.
Just kind of understand there's a 90 percentile, if I would just go back to the first sheet, 5-second interval of the 90 percentile of 2 minutes and 35 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And then you add the shoot time, then you add the other time. Now we're talking about close to almost 8 minutes versus the national time of what,
It
7?
could be, the national time is 7.
Yeah.
So we can provide, I'll try to see about what a chart would look like that has everything in it. Dispatch, shoot, travel, so we can just see. Even though we don't have control over
Right.
all the components, we have control over 2.
Right.
It's still helpful for the board to see and for the public to see. How long does it take? On average, and then at the 90th percentile.
Right.
For us to get there.
But we could get named for something that for the most part is out of control.
Right, yeah, that's what, yeah.
Yeah.
Chief, in the one that was in our packet, the total time was 7 minutes and 22 seconds.
Right.
In the revised one, it's 6 minutes and 51 seconds. What was revised to bring the total time down?
So that measured all calls, whether it was code 3 or not.
I see.
Yeah, that was it, because I looked at the data, I'm like, what are we measuring here? Because I've been looking at, I've usually been comparing us to what EMSA is measuring, and suddenly we were, 23 seconds over our requirement, and then I found out it's everything, code calls, all units, everything, so,
For the
What we did-
722.
yeah, it's 722, so that was the revised
And the other one is
Just
only
the
medical
651.
and fire.
medical calls,
Code 3
fire
calls.
engines, is what the,
651 is
Yeah.
the code 3 calls.
code 3 for fire engines, the medical calls.
Yeah.
Not for fires. So.
Okay.
But, when we, as we move forward, we'll be super clear as to what we're measuring and what's been excluded, so it's just transparent, and we're not cherry picking out data that makes us look good, we just wanna display data that helps us make good decisions and then shares with the public what we're doing.
Great, thank you.
Thank
you.
Yeah.
That was a 45-minute bullet point.
That's right. So we're on strategic plan update now.
Very important one, Chief.
Yeah, it is really important.
It's
That
the
was
most
good,
important.
I appreciate it, I like talking about data and statistics, so that was good. Strategic plan update, so I am still waiting, I reached out to 3 consultants, this is to help with the board's goal of creating a strategic plan, a 5-year plan. So currently I have 2 bids, I'm waiting for one more from AP Triton, I got one from Citygate, one for Center of Public Safety Excellence, which is an organization that deals with the accreditation. And AP Triton, I reached out to them today, I should have it within a week. I'll report back to you on that at the next board meeting.
I just have
yes.
one comment, but I think it's really important that we do that, so I'm in agreement with that. But I also think that having this data would be really helpful too, and I'm wondering, when do you expect that we would have, much better data that we could feel comfortable with?
I'm gonna overpromise and say we'll have it by next month.
Oh,
And
that
then we'll-
fast? Oh,
yeah,
I thought you were gonna say 3 years or something.
No,
Okay,
it's pretty quickly, just in having the conversations with the consultant. It feels like their ramp up time in order to have access to our data and start creating reports, it could be 2 weeks, so I'm optimistic that next month it will be.
the reason I'm saying this is I think that when we look at a strategic plan and we're talking about response times, and if we factor in, to me, the most important thing is not the actuality or the history. To me, it's that survival data on survival after heart attack or stroke or stopping breathing or something. And those time periods are much shorter than what we have here. And at that point, we need to be looking at things like drones. We perhaps need to be looking at fire shifts where people don't sleep on the job and a whole bunch of other things. And I'd like to see us open up everything to make sure that we're meeting people's needs to survive.
We will have much, much better data by the time we do our strategic.
Okay, great.
Girls Fire Camp is just another item. This is a girls empowerment camp held for 9th to 12th grade girls. It was just this past Sunday. I attended at the College of San Mateo. Really a great thing to have young women see women in the fire service and be able to identify with them. It's really gonna be a great outreach effort for us. Of note, their attendance was 34 campers, and normally they said if they would get about 70, so it's a good sign for us. We'll start doing some outreach next year. I think it's gonna be an annual thing.
Right.
We had our 2 female firefighters that were there and teaching and training and having the young women look up to them, so that will be a continuing process, and we will reach out to all of our high schools, so we can get some of our local residents in there. Workforce resilience is, you have a little swag on your desk. As we talk about community resilience, we are now doing a little bit for our workforce. These are actually items that are gonna be given out to all of our employees during the open enrollment. It's basically an iPhone 12 battery. It's hard to find little charging cables, but you'll see a little ribbed section on the tip of it. Yeah, that's the charge of the battery, but there's actually a little cable on the top and bottom of that will plug into your iPhone. you get 2 full charges out of that.
Yeah, well, we figured it out.
Oh, so-
Yeah.
oh, you figured
It-
If
It's
it
safe.
goes out, you have to
Well, it's good for, you can plug it in and keep using your phone. You can plug it in and just let it sit there and it will recharge it up to 2 times. And then once you've used up that battery, you just plug it back into a USB port with the charging cable that you got. Yeah, you keep it in your backpack, your glove box, and you just think about the challenges we had on December 31st where nobody had power and they were just looking just for a place to charge their device. This is a result with somebody, we had a meeting, Director Crawley and I did with Chris McCutcheon, who used to be the manager for the Grateful Dead, and he started doing these batteries at concerts, all the younger generation don't want their phones to die in the middle of it because they can't TikTok or Instagram. He's related to the Maui relief efforts. He's looking at trying to provide them to all first responders there. So he offered to sell them to us at our cost, which was $11. So we bought 200 initially. First thing was to put in the hands of all our employees. So they can carry them around with them, whether they're on the fire engine, in backpack, purse, or the glove box. And, just some considerations. I think we're also gonna probably start passing them out to maybe our CERT graduates too, to just prepare them a little bit more. And part of a bigger, broader discussion, and again, goes back to our experiences during all of the weather issues, is maybe creating some resiliency stations at our fire stations. He's got these large USB ports that you can charge 100 devices at once on there, right? So just think about us being able to open up our engine room and have people stay warm, be able to charge their devices, and we're also having some separate discussions about trying to remember Elon Musk's company with this, the Starlink.
Starlink, yeah.
So we have, Starlink is satellite internet access, and being able to have Starlinks at every fire station as a backup for redundancy for us, and then should we have another instance like we had during the storms, everybody needs to be connected, right? And even the folks in Atherton that had generators could charge their things, but they couldn't connect to the internet. With Starlink, that resolved part of it. So those are some of the conversations we're having about trying to help us have resilient communities and have places where people know they can go and have lots of details to figure out. But this was a start, and starting with just working on creating that resilient workforce.
Wait, so Gary? Yeah, Gary, you'll get yours when we see you next.
Yeah, I'm not concerned.
I know.
See,
The next item there is we just, 2 weekends ago, had our San Mateo County annual memorial where we recognize retirees that have passed away in the last year. We recognized Hank Reed, John Cross, Dale De Silva, and then we also recognize, which we do every year, Rich Hall, Leroy Pitlock, and Brian Dixon, who passed away from job-related either heart or cancers. So, coming up, we have the Atherton anniversary on September 24th at their town center, which I believe is at City Hall.
Yeah, they're
Sunday, September 24th,
from 11 to 3.
11 to 3. We have a proclamation that hopefully the board will ratify or approve tonight, and Director Crawley is going to be presenting it at 2:55. Assuming we have a proclamation.
They're all other programs.
oh, yeah.
And all that stuff.
Heads up, pancake breakfast is back on. We are, in theory, mostly out of COVID, but we're starting to have these really cherished community events. So that is going to be on October 14th at Station 1. Chief Johnston is leading the charge on organizing that. So come flip some pancakes and break some bread with your community members.
I'll volunteer.
The Union Benevolent Report Out, this is I'm sharing with you what's coming next month. There's been an ask from District 10 to be able to share either monthly or quarterly with the board some of the activities that they're doing that are helping our community, so you'll see that.
Well, so Chief, just so you know, they've always been invited.
Okay.
They know they can be there.
We chatted with Walt today on however you wanna do it, whether it's a written report, you wanna show up or zoom in,
Sometimes they don't.
we'd love to hear from you. Just,
East Palo
quick-
Alto Music Festival.
oh yeah, East Palo Alto Music Festival. As I had mentioned, we had a CERT tent out there, staffed with people, and we had engine companies rotating through. It was, from my understanding, I didn't get to know, but it was a large event. And
And then
for whatever reason, the MMA bout was canceled. I don't know why, but really isn't super relevant.
we had other community groups there, like the Hood Squad was out there, were they out there? Yeah, so that was a good presence, it seems like, in the
Yeah.
community.
Incidents, things that are going on. Just since our last meeting, we did a Swiftwater pre-positioning deployment for Hurricane Hillary, which I think was Tropical Storm Hillary as it crossed through Baja and into California. And we had deployed, or pre-deployed a 16-member team, Swiftwater rescue team down to Riverside County, fully reimbursed by Cal OES on that. Also sent out an engine on a mixed Type 1 strike team to the Six Rivers National Forest for a fire and a couple of overhead assignments. I'm gonna say the two structure fires I listed, the first one I actually looked back, I reported this out at the last meeting, so I won't repeat it there. The second fire was a fire in the 2400 block of Fordham Street, East Palo Alto. It was a result, as far as we can tell, from a faulty solar installation. Primarily over the garage, but it ended up, displacing 3 families out of that one occupancy there, so. We issued Red Cross assisted, and we also issued some city. For that,
Anything on the station 75, near station 77, did you get any update?
on the building
The one that
process,
just happened, no, the fire.
oh, it was possible.
Oh, it was, okay.
Chief Coyle said it ended up being that was one of those good intent calls,
Okay.
or whatever, I don't remember how it's gonna be classified, but that was one of those.
Okay, any questions? Gary, any questions? Okay, then let's move on to the consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'd like
Would you like
to remove number 2.
Okay,
I'd like to remove number 3.
okay,
I think that eliminates the consent calendar.
Okay. okay, so, Rob, I'll just take, because now we're gonna talk about we discussed the consent calendar, so you wanted to remove number 2, which is regarding the minutes
Yes,
from the August meeting.
yes. Under, when we had discussed the Emergency Preparedness Committee on item number 7, there was more actually written on public comment than there was anything from myself or Director Bernstein regarding the committee and the dissolvement of the committee. So what I'd like to do is insert some of my arguments that I had raised during that meeting and put them into the minutes instead of the short version, which is on page number 2.
So basically, you want to go from our normal standard of action minutes and put in what your interpretation is of what happened in the minutes.
Well, I think it's a little bit more important. I can understand the public comment being longer than the arguments that myself and Chuck made to retain the committee. And I'd like to read the areas in which I brought up, including number 2 of our board goals, which involves emergency preparedness. So I'd like to read that into, or put that into the record, where it's just not there was a motion, a second, and a vote, and it passed. I want that so the public knows that we consider emergency preparedness a very important area, and that even though it was 3-2 and the board agreed to dissolve the committee, I think there's huge arguments to keep the committee, and I'd like to read my arguments and have them posted in the minutes of the meeting.
Michelle, from a board clerk perspective, is that something that we can do? I mean, we probably could.
Well, if you're gonna vote on the minutes tonight, then you should read what you want to have included so that the board can, you all
For
can
the
vote on it
amendment.
tonight.
Would you like to do that, Rob, so that,
Yeah.
and then make a motion
I'll
for
read
the
'em.
amended
Yeah.
minutes?
And then in the future, I would just maybe recommend, like Director Bernstein's done this in the past, if you wanna email me what you wanna note for the record.
I can also email you this list too,
Okay,
after I read it.
whatever
Into
you
the
want me to
record.
put in the record, yeah, I can, yeah, and that would be great, and then I'll just insert it.
Okay.
And I could do that before the board meeting, so it's already in
Okay.
there.
I went over item 1, removing the committee even with the current disaster on Maui, the failures of the public safety agencies to warn residents. Work with the committee and staff to formulate a workable plan, work as a team. Establish input by elected members of communities we serve, which is not a staff function. Establish with committee to invite all volunteers affected by community's purpose and results. Coordination with other public safety elements, Public Works, Police, San Mateo County OES, State OES, FEMA OES. And then finally, on our board goals, under number 2, it says improve district-wide emergency prep, including community volunteers. Well, we have 2.1, strong CERT or volunteer efforts in the district, supported financially, but community-led. 2.2, community preparedness, input from our community stakeholders, and improved engagement with volunteer groups. 2.3, develop a district-wide disaster response plan encompassing the roles of fire, special operation teams, and community volunteers. 2.4, improve district-wide communications with communities we serve by the district.
Steve, did you have a comment?
Maybe Virginia, under proposed agenda items for number 3, I can remove that item. If my notes are incorporated
Well,
into the
okay,
minutes.
so the board, that's fine, but the board has to approve the amended minutes. But Steve, did you have a comment? Because he was.
Well, I just wanted to
citing-
understand whether, Director Solano, you're asking that the board approve the minutes to reflect the comments that you made at the last meeting, as
Yes,
you
sir.
just indicated? Or
Exactly.
if you want the minutes for today's meeting to reflect the comments that you're making now?
It was the comments that I made at the last meeting, and I summarized those as such.
Right, and
So I think it would be for the board to decide whether to approve the minutes and whether the board believes that that's the accurate representation of what the board felt what happened at its last meeting. I have no objection to that.
Right, so that's been my understanding, Rob, is that you wanted to read these comments into the August 15th minutes. To amend the minutes for August 15th.
Yes,
is that correct?
I'll make a motion to amend the minutes as I've read.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any public comment or director's comments? Gary? Gary?
Yeah, so I struggle with it a little bit, and let me kind of articulate why. Well, I appreciate the desire to reflect the comments that Director Bernstein and Director Solano had shared during the last meeting. By including all those comments, we're not including all the counter arguments or the other perspectives. You know, and in a lot of these board goals, there wasn't a dispute about the board goals. The dispute was about what's the best way to achieve the board goals. And right now, the recommendation that was made in the last meeting, recommended by myself, was that we not populate that particular committee, giving staff time to work on the set of initiatives necessary to improve community preparedness. And so the challenge I have, and I guess it's a little bit of a question for Steve, is if we're going to put in one series of arguments that says, this is why 2 board members supported a particular initiative, how far do we want to go in our minutes to then reflect that says, but there are 3 other board members that had varying opinions that were potentially counter to that. And if we don't represent both, then we have kind of a one-sided set of minutes that I don't personally believe accurately reflects the dialogue. And I think this is why, by practice, the board has historically not provided the full range of arguments, pro and con against every argument, but instead said, hey, there are videos available that share all that information. And in this particular case, the YouTube video is out there of the meeting. Anybody that wants to see all the pros and cons of everything discussed, they have an ability to do that. It just doesn't seem to me that the minutes are the place to reflect every back and forth of every discussion that we have in a board meeting, because the minutes will become unreadable if we do that. But Steve, I'm curious kind of your opinion of what's
Sure.
the best
legal
practice
gloss-
from a legal perspective.
The legal gloss on this is that the purpose of the minutes are to create the official record of the district's actions. Director Bloom, you were right that in the age now that you're recording these, there is a video backup that would be recognizable and accepted by a court if there's any question of what actually happened at the meeting. And so the legal importance of the accurate minutes is diminished because of the existence of the video. To be candid, what's happening now doesn't offend me from a legal perspective, because I don't believe you're really discussing about what should be in the minutes. You're discussing other issues concerning what's important to you as a board, and that's appropriate for the board to talk about. But I think the question comes down to, you're absolutely right, Director Bloom, in that it's hard to know where to draw the line. If you accept this modification, are you going to accept another modification next month? There are counter arguments also, as Director Solano has raised. So I don't think I can solve this for you from a legal perspective. I don't think that the district's legal protections are enhanced or diminished by the actions that you might take.
Okay, but just to be clear, I just want to make sure that I'm clear that the YouTube video of the board meeting that's posted to the website is part of the official record of the meeting already.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Okay. So this just seems like we're just adding complexity to, forget legal opinion for a second here. This just feels as though as a board member, we're just adding enormous amounts of complexity to our minutes by putting the pros and cons of every argument in them.
So maybe a more practical answer to your question is that there are two best practices for the creation of minutes, and I'm sure Michelle is well versed in these. There's what you call action minutes, which is what the district, since I've joined the district, has done, which is just a short summary. But there is a style of minute writing that is much more fulsome and includes more details of sort of a running commentary. That's just not what I've seen the district create. Michelle is shaking her head. I'm not sure if it's because that means she's agreeing with me or disagreeing with me, but that's what I've observed at the district, is that you prefer to use action minutes.
Action minutes.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
I was misunderstanding what you were saying at first.
Chuck?
Thanks for that clarification. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Gary.
Well, with respect to action minutes, I refer everyone to page 3, item 9, 3 of 4, item 9. Town of Atherton, and this is Director Bloom's report. Director Bloom reported the city council discussed the housing element and pickleball. He attended their environmental protection committee and discussed tree canopies. Now, I'm not sure what actions any of that implies. So it seems to me we have kind of uneven minutes, let's say it this way. And I think what Rob is trying to do is have the minutes reflect discussion that was more, in his view, and mine too, more important than tree canopies and pickleball.
Well, Chuck, with all due respect, that was the liaison's report. There were no actions taken. That's why that report is there. These are action minutes, and so
But no
this-
action was taken, you could just say he made a
But
report.
this is the report. I mean, and Michelle had this on here, like we always do, and so anyway, that's the report. There's no action, there was
But this
action
is
taken here, and the action is what has been recorded. So anyway, and did you have a question, Robert? or
Yeah,
comment?
just for Rob, so what you read, Rob, was that, it seemed like there was, I guess, 6 or 7 different bullet points.
Those are the bullet points that I covered at the last meeting, and it wasn't inserted in the minutes.
Well, because we take action minutes, that's why. So he's asking for us to insert them.
Yeah, so I know in the past that there have been, because I think Chuck did it once, I think I may have, I'm not sure. We all have done it once, as I recall, have asked Michelle to include some things into the minutes at the next board meeting. So I have a problem with that myself, because sometimes if you're misunderstood, you want the report to reflect that misunderstanding. But I didn't hear of any misunderstanding. There was arguments presented about on both sides of why the committee should resolve itself for the balance of the year. And then there was arguments that they were keeping it, and I think that's what, if I hear Rob, that's pretty much what he's saying. In terms of, these are some additional points that was not covered in the report. So we don't have a policy or procedure regarding whether we should take other minutes or other comments after the board meeting and insert them into our minutes. So in the absence of that particular policy, I think those comments seem like, unless we're gonna set a precedent tonight to not accept any comments at all once Michelle put out the document to make those comments. I know I asked Michelle the time I did it before the board meeting, if I can insert these particular comments, and I think it seemed like that would be the most appropriate time to make those changes, because if it's pressing enough, you want it in so that everybody can see it. So in the absence of any policy we have around that, then it's kind of almost up in the air at this point, as to put it in or not put it in. If not put it in, then that sets the precedent that no other minutes, no other comments from any of the board members would go into the upcoming meeting unless it's given to Michelle beforehand.
Chuck?
Yeah, I agree with Robert's comments there, that it seems to me that when somebody feels strongly that something should be included in the minutes because it's meaningful, that we should respect that. But I think Director Bloom's concern that the other side is not presented is correct. It should be. So I was gonna propose that, since this is of importance to Rob, that the people that that made the motion and approved it could put in something of equal length or whatever as the rationale why. The minutes would then reflect what the board felt about this issue and its importance, and that would be okay to do it. But I think both sides should be represented, so I think that's a fair thing to do, which would mean that rather than try to do it tonight, that we could submit we could submit the comments in support of this motion or whatever to Michelle and bring these minutes back to the next meeting for approval.
I think you're on that good points there, Chuck, but I think though for the average public who wants to review our minutes and procedures, it's already on video. And I thought that's what video was about. Anybody who wanted to really get some concern, have some concerns about what went on in the meeting, they can go to the video, look at the whole tape, the 6 hours that was here, and understand and figure out exactly the tone and the essence of what was being said and being promoted for that particular agenda item. So it's almost like a redundancy to kind of have folks that kind of opposing points of views and put together a 3-page document to be inserted into the minutes where they can just go to the video and look at it. So I'm trying to figure out, I mean, we both can serve the same purpose, but one, you're gonna have to create these other set of other response to an argument that, which can go to video and see it firsthand without having to go through that.
Chuck?
Well, that's true, what you're saying, but when you look at the minutes and we know what item number it was, we go to item 9 or whatever, and in less than 1 minute, you can find it and read it, and it's all done. Whereas with the video, when you're talking about a 3-hour meeting, it takes an awful long time to find these things on the video. I mean, it's very, very awkward, very time consuming to do that.
I think we just need to try to figure out what policy procedure we're gonna go by, because we're setting a precedent if we start down the road of having 2 or 3 pages of insertion in a minute, arguments at the time of trying to approve the minutes at that point. And I understand that people want their voice to be heard and people to understand. So, I think there's we need to figure out a procedure on how to make this thing work. We stick with the video review, or we kind of specifically have, after every item, go over it and make sure that Michelle got all of the points and counterpoints written down. And I don't know how long that's gonna take. So,
Virginia?
Rob?
I think Chuck's point is well made. I have no problem with the other side writing up what their reasoning is, and I've already done mine. I think that's reasonable. Is there a purpose why the board doesn't want this inserted other than procedural policy? I mean, when we vote on things, we can give an excuse as to why we voted on certain things, and it could be put in the minutes, can it, Michelle? Or should I
If it's
direct it to
noticed by
Steve?
record,
Board votes on it. Right.
Well, not the comments that if I vote nay on a whatever item, I can inject my argument why I voted nay, right?
well, yeah, that's what I was saying, that oftentimes Director Bernstein has said, I'm voting no for the record, and I would like it noted for the record, the reason why I voted no was for this reason. And he says that at that time during the vote, like, so at the last meeting, maybe the equivalent would have been, you were voting yes on your motion, and I'm voting yes for this reason, and if you could please note that for the record, then I would include that comment. And then somebody else who opposed it could have said,
Well,
I'm opposing
yeah.
it for the record, but
Is there a reason why my fellow board members don't want this put into the minutes of the meeting? Is there a reason?
Gary?
Gary, is there a reason?
I can give a reason, which is I'm not sitting here contemporaneously listening to the discussion we had at the last meeting to know that everything you just said is exactly as it was presented at the last meeting. And so from my perspective, the accurate reflection or the accurate set of minutes for this particular meeting and any meeting is a combination of our action-related minutes that Michelle takes combined with the video that actually has the dialogue verbatim, exactly how it was said by each individual. And I'm not making an accusation here that you've changed it or modified or anything else. I'm just saying we have an accurate reflection of exactly what was shared and what was said at the last meeting. And it's fully documented in a video exactly as it was said. And to me, that is the most accurate record we could possibly have on this matter. So for me, it's a matter of accuracy and confirming accuracy. And just the same, I don't want to make up on the spot counter arguments, because my counter arguments I might make today might be inconsistent with what was shared in the video and what was shared at the time during the meeting. So
That's why I
accurate-
asked under item number 11, that's why I asked for a transcript for it. So we can go there.
we have a video of it. I mean, that's a different agenda topic altogether that we probably shouldn't get into because we're not at that item. But we do have today, the official record of the meeting. This was my question to Steve. The official record of the meeting is a combination of the action-oriented minutes, and a court would legally recognize the video as evidence of what occurred at the meeting. So to me, we have the full collective set between the action minutes and the video as to what the meeting dialogue included. And I don't think it's a good practice, and I don't think it's a productive practice that when we get to a subsequent meeting, we start revisiting the arguments and restating arguments for the record in a new way. Let the video speak to the way the video spoke. The video says exactly what occurred and how it occurred.
Thank you, Gary. I'm gonna take public comment if there's any public comment. Michelle?
Okay. Give me one moment.
Good evening, everyone. This is Lynn Bramlett, and I start out by asking, what is the protocol for allowing board members to speak at a meeting? Because I was watching your meeting. The trains are coming through. I hope you can still hear me. And what I observed was Director Solano not being given his opportunity to speak, basically. So he had an initial comment. He wanted to speak again. He made that clear. I think he was in a 2-hour different time zone. And he was waiting patiently. And it was known that he wanted to speak again. So this discussion about the argument, I would assert, I didn't see Director Solano give his full quote argument, because before he could speak again, Director Bloom made a motion that was seconded, there was a vote, and so it's basically end of discussion. So I was very surprised, because I don't see that when I go to the council meetings in Menlo Park, not that everything's perfect there, but you know, when someone wants to speak and makes it known, and they're not allowed effectively to speak, is that a full discussion? So to me, that's the real issue here. I don't think his voice was fully heard.
Anyone else? Michelle?
Yes.
Thank you, Lynn.
Diana, I think you're free to speak.
Trying to unmute.
There
Am
we
I
go.
unmuted? Okay.
Yes.
I attended the meeting that we're talking about, and when I read the notes, I was frankly shocked. From a layman's perspective, I would expect that the minutes would reflect a summary of what happened. And I think the minutes that you guys have there do not reflect what happened in that meeting. And a lot of content was lost. And I can appreciate Mr. Bloom's suggestion about we can't after the fact add comments. So why don't you go back to the transcript, since there is contention here, and have the transcript re-summarized where you include more content, because I was shocked at it. And also the reason why in my understanding, the reason why we review the minutes is for this very reason. So I don't think you're going out of line by questioning it. That's what the whole point of agreeing to the minutes is about. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Okay, so we do have a motion and a second on the table. Michelle, would you please repeat the motion?
I believe the motion is made by Director Solano, seconded by Director Bernstein, to amend the minutes to include his comments on agenda item number 7 from the last meeting, which he would forward to me.
Okay.
As he read them out to everybody here.
Okay, thank you. So let's, you have one more comment, because I'd like to get a roll call going here.
I want to ask a question.
Okay.
I'm curious, because this is different than in our previous meetings. Why do we not see all the attendees on the screen?
It's the new system IT came up with they have this new equipment, and it doesn't have the ability to do that. But that's why you have me.
Yeah, but I would like to know who's attending the meeting, so I wonder, could you ask them if they have the technical capability to include them?
I can, but I think that I asked them before and they said no, so.
Okay, let's do a roll call, please, on this.
Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Bloom?
So I can't see Director Bloom anymore either.
Director Bloom? Can you unmute
Sorry,
yourself?
I was on mute. I'm sorry. Nay.
Thank you. Director Jones?
Nay, and for the record, I think that this is gonna set a precedent that I think none of the board members want to, be a party to in the future.
Director Solano?
Aye.
And Director Crawley?
Nay, and I concur with Director Jones. We've actually had this situation in the past and, you know, we've stuck with our action minutes, which the board has agreed upon to do, and that's what, that I think we should stick with that. And I have a recollection that's a little different from other people because I had to actually take a recess on this, but I'm voting nay on this, so that motion fails. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of August 15th, 2023 for the special and regular board meetings?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, any discussion on this? Any public comments, Michelle?
There are no public comments.
Roll call, please.
Director Bernstein?
Nay,
Actually, hold on one second. I have to make a new square. Okay, give me 1 second, sorry. Okay. Director Bloom?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Nay.
And Director Crawley?
Aye, so that motion carries, and we'll move on to the treasurer's report. Chuck, you pulled this off. Is there,
yeah, I just have one quick question about it, and, I was curious on page, this is packet page 17. Just above the title General Fund Fiscal Summary, it makes reference to a sales tax return. And I was curious what items the district sells that generate sales tax.
I can, good evening, directors, good evening, everyone. This is Elaine. So I can actually speak on that. So basically, sales tax return, this does not pertain actually to us selling like particular equipment or any other things, and we impose like sales tax on it. So basically, this is basically when we do purchases, when we purchase things, let's say equipment or any other materials and supplies, we are actually not exempt for sales taxes. So we do pay sales taxes. So every quarter, what's gonna happen is we analyze what we paid, and if what we paid is less than what was the standard rate for the county or for the city of Menlo Park, which is 9.375, then we pay the excess or the difference to the state. So that's what it means. It's not like we're imposing like sales taxes on or anything that we sell basically.
Oh, you have the option to tell the vendor to charge a sales tax at the appropriate rate, isn't that correct?
We don't have that option basically. So it's basically within their system. So whatever it's on their system, that's what we pay. Whatever it's on the invoice, that's what we pay. That's why when we review the invoices, we make sure that we got charged for the correct sales tax amount. And if there's a difference, basically, then that's what we remit to the state.
And roughly for a quarter, how much sales tax do we pay?
The difference, we pay. I couldn't answer the amount of sales tax that we actually get charged for, because again, this is basically included on the invoices. So we're not really bifurcating what's sales tax and what's the amount of the purchase in itself. But on a quarterly basis, the difference, quote unquote, that we're paying for the sales taxes, I would say it's roughly between 2,000 to 5,000, or it can go as high as 10,000 basically if we have like large purchases.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. I'll move to approve the treasurer's report.
I'll second.
any public comment on this item?
There are no public comments.
Okay, any discussion from directors? Okay, roll call please, Michelle?
Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Bloom?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Aye.
Director Crawley?
Aye, so that motion carries. So we're on to the regular agenda right now, and I know that there are members of the public who are waiting to hear about item number 10, which is to approve a resolution authorizing the fire chief to donate an out-of-service engine to the Maui Fire Department. So I would like to move that item up right now so that, those who are waiting for this item can hear this and do what they need to do after this, or, you know, they're obviously welcome to stay for the remainder of this meeting. So if we move item 10 up to this right now, Chief, would you like to give the report? Sure. Oh, and this is to approve a resolution authorizing the fire chief to donate an out-of-service engine to the Maui Fire Department. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Director, and members of the board, members of the public. We all witnessed in early August what was just an incredibly devastating fire on the island of Maui, and especially the historic community of Lahaina. Just absolutely tragic, the loss of life and the loss of property. I will correct the number on there that's in the staff report. It says 115 people. After the report was written, it's been corrected and lowered down to 97 as they do their DNA testing, but still, nonetheless, just tragic. During that fire, the Maui Fire Department lost what was almost a brand new Pierce Fire Engine, Maui Fire Engine number 1. We became aware of this, and a conversation started happening between Director Crawley and myself about the possibility of donating one of the 6 engines that we had surplus. And so then the conversation began. My first step was really to reach out to the Maui Fire Chief, Bradford Ventura, and see if there was even an interest there, you know, before we started jumping through a bunch of hoops, figuring out the legalities and the logistics. And he passed it off to his deputy chief, Gavin Fujioka, and Gavin replied back, absolutely, they do have a need and would very much appreciate it. And by the way, they also have a fleet of all Pierce engines, so it was really a good fit for them. And they have that challenge there being on the islands where it's very different than us here, where somebody could drive a fire truck from Nevada over as a surplus engine, that they're just on an island by themselves. So they're very interested. We had some conversations with them about which engine would probably be the best fit for them. And trying to balance, you know, we have a kind of a wide range from, I think it was a 2003 all the way up to 2014, and trying to figure out what might be a sweet spot that would be acceptable with the board. And, you know, as far as the fair market value and something that still had some useful life in it. So it wasn't like we're donating a fire engine to them that would just be a bunch of problems. So we identified old engine 77, which is parked outside here. It's old, it's not so old. We obviously are in a position where the board had recently approved the purchase of 6 engines and a ladder truck. So we found ourselves in a really fortunate position to be in possession of a number of newer fire engines that really could help out. So we had some conversations between Chief Fujioka and his mechanic and Rudy and myself, and identified former engine 77, which is out there. They took a look at the engine hours and the pump hours and the build numbers and figured that would be a good fit. So with that, I consulted with Steve Miller, our counsel, to give some guidance on whether this was permissible, which we determined was in alignment with a number of the things we've done in the past, both with the urban search and rescue team and with some donations that we've made in the past. And so also came up with trying to determine a fair market value on what that engine would be. I know we had a previous board report that had identified some potential values of those engines. I checked back in with Rudy to see what real-time auction estimates were, and he came up with that range that's in the staff report of somewhere between 45 and 72,000. So just I picked a midpoint for estimating it from fair market value of 58,500. That said, we've also had, we just had an auction close on one of our old 2005 engines. We realized about $24,000 on it, which was, you know, kind of in alignment and measures up with what we would expect here. So it's somewhere in that range. We will never know what the true value is unless we put it on the open market and somebody purchased it, but that's a reasonable estimate right now. Logistically speaking, I've been working with two different shipping companies. One's Matson and the other is Pasha. Both of them are headquartered up here. They both are significant shippers to the Hawaiian Islands. Right now, I'm still in the process of trying to figure out whether or not we can get an in-kind donation completely for that. I do have an indication that at minimum we'll get a discounted rate off of what the regular fair market value would be. You know, I put it in there that I called up Matson and just talked to one of their customer service reps and got a quote for if I was Joe Schmo shipping a fire engine over there, what would it cost? And it was just a little over $20,000. So should we not get a full in-kind donation, we expect to get a significantly reduced cost associated with that. You know, if we ship it with Matson, we'll have to ship it out of Long Beach. And if we ship it with Pasha, it'll be out of San Diego. The reasons for that, even though they both ship out of Oakland, is that the roll-on, roll-off ships where you can actually drive a fire engine onto that go out of Long Beach and San Diego or National City, which is down there respectively. So those are the current plans for it. You know, it probably will still take us, should the board approve this tonight, at least a month to, you know, work in with their shipping schedules and get it there. I have, you know, had cautious conversations so I don't overpromise with either of the two fire chiefs over there, you know, knowing that the board had to approve this, but you know, you think about our opportunity to provide something to, you know, who is in essence our neighbors there. You know, they're neighbors separated by quite a few thousand miles of the Pacific Ocean, but neighbors who don't really have access to a lot of mutual aid. And you know, you see a lot of fire departments in California make donations to, you know, needy fire agencies in Mexico and in some other challenged communities. So we happen to have one that's part of our United States that's in need. So with that, that's my recommendation is that we donate what was previously Engine 77 out there and make a donation to the Maui Fire Department for that. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the board might have.
So Chief, is it my understanding that the sale of the, well, the $20,000, I guess, shipping cost possibly, or some discount thereof, will the sale from the other first engine supplement that cost of paying for it?
It certainly could. I mean, the reality is if the district pays for that cost, it's an expense that we hadn't budgeted, but we'd certainly have sufficient funds in which to cover that. We could, my guess is that will be discounted to at least half of that number. But yes, we could. You know, the revenues are currently budgeted in our budget for the sale of those engines. They haven't been earmarked for anything, if you could. It could cover the cost.
Rob, that's asking for questions.
Oh, well, did you have a question, Rob?
Oh, yeah, I do. I thought Chuck.
Did you have a question?
Question or comments?
Oh, are we gonna equip the truck, Chief, since the truck was totally destroyed?
That's, well, I know that the current truck has some equipment on it. I've reached out and at least posed that question to the deputy chief over there to see if they're interested or have a need. So I haven't heard back from him. I think he's waiting to hear whether or not the fire engine gets approved, but all the new engines got brand new equipment on it. So we have some excess equipment that's currently on that engine that might be donated with it, whether it's fully equipped or not. I know Chief Shackelhoman has also offered up. He's been collecting used fire equipment to donate to Ukraine. He said he could also, if Maui has an interest, could use some of that equipment to fully stock up that thing. Like I said, I just want to make sure that we give the Maui Fire Department exactly what they need, not some equipment that is not compatible with what they use, or so that they don't have any issues with having to dispose of it. But that's a solid maybe.
Yes.
To ask them, as to the equipment, what would be new replacement cost for that fire truck? If we had to
All the-
replace all
well,
the equipment on
I'm
that?
just trying to think.
It draws the lines, you know.
Yeah, we wouldn't be sending, yeah, the jaws, we don't replace, so we're not sending jaws, but it's mostly hose and fittings and nozzles, so, well, I'd be just making a guess about the replacement cost, but I'm gonna say $20,000 to $30,000 in hose. Yeah,
Not
and we've already,
100,000, but
yeah, the value of the old hose that's currently on 77 is much, much less if it's even sellable on the auction site.
well, Chuck
Do you have
wants
any more questions?
well, I do, but, did we inquire, I know we want to ship it and the slow boat to Hawaii or whatever, you know, we're gonna put it on. Is there a way that we can coordinate that with FEMA or DHS, put it on a C-130 and fly it there? I mean, they've gotta be flying equipment in and out of Maui because it is a designated, you know, federal disaster area. I mean, is that a resource that we can tap at so we can get it there faster if we vote to approve it?
I can certainly ask the questions through our contacts at Cal OES that basically have contacts with FEMA.
And the Federal Fire Administration that oversees DHS with these disasters, do they have any funding? Since we have a fully operational Pierce vehicle and great research finding out that that's what they trained with. So, you know, that's an excellent point. Would they buy this fire engine from us? Since the fire engines are backlogged, to get new fire engines, whether it's something like 2-year backlog in order to replace it or to build new fire engines. So would the federal government buy this fire engine from us in order to send them out? Is that a possibility?
I think it's unlikely. Just you think about the problem is us making or identifying a fire engine that we would now want the federal government to buy at fair market value or reduced fair market value and everybody else who has a used fire truck that they're trying to sell that might want the feds to reimburse them. I don't know how many tentacles it would have, but I wouldn't even know where to begin on something like that.
And that's not what we're discussing.
I don't,
And, you know, considering all the military installations that are in Hawaii that have accessibility to firefighting equipment, that they, you know, that should be another resource for the Maui Fire Department to obtain equipment closer. I mean, was that an option for the chief in order to do this?
I don't know what they've explored. I know there's, you know, you're talking about the military bases and
Yeah.
most of them have
They all have,
federal fire agencies on them, whether
in
they
fact,
have.
a lot of them are contracted fire agencies.
Yeah. I don't know the challenges associated with getting the feds to donate to a local government agency, so I don't. But I guess the answer is no. I certainly didn't explore it, but I have no idea if the Maui Fire Department did.
No, these are just some questions that I have, you know, having, you know, dealing with FEMA in the past before my other capacity. I know there's some of these resources that you can tap, and especially if it's a declared federal disaster area, you know, there's a lot of funding that's opened up for that, and a lot of services, especially through FEMA and through DHS. So I just want to explore all these avenues and, you know, make an informed decision, that's all. I mean, it's a large, it's a valuable asset to us. I don't know what we would get as an auction item, but, you know, these are just questions that I'd like answered, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, just by way of information, and I looked into this because I mean, in one sense, the fair market value doesn't really matter, except that it might represent what it is that our taxpayers would be giving up in terms of making this gift. But there were two 2009 Pierce Velocity engines listed when I did a search. One of them was on Fenton Fire and it was $195,000, so that was quite high. And then another one on All Surplus, $75,000. So, as you say, you don't really know what it would sell for until you sell it. But I have kind of a different thought, and I feel like I'm being a little bit of a Scrooge here, but it's not the mission of the fire district, in my opinion, to be a charitable agency. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. We have our own needs for equipment, particularly, in my view, some sort of an alerting system for the district. And I don't think we should be making a gift. These are great engines. I think they have a market value, whatever it is. I think there's another issue that Rob kind of referred to here, which is that we have something ready to go. So to the extent that nobody has to wait, that they could order it and get it immediately, I think we could, make a good deal for them or something like that and suddenly become used engine salespeople and sell it to them. But I don't think it's something that we should be making a gift of our district funds. I don't think that's what the taxpayers elect us to do. And so I'm not in favor of making a gift of the engine. But if getting it quickly and fully outfitted was something that, in the interest of time, they have an interest in, I think we certainly could be cooperative and we could give it to them at a reasonable price or something, but I'm not in support of this at this time.
Do you have a comment or question?
Question, comments, thesis report, call it what you want. I think it's a prudent thing for us to do is we have a truck that is out of our service bus, 2009 engine. It has given the district plenty of service. And it's like most things, what seems to be, and I'm not using it in a negative sense, what seems to be out of date, old bus, could be a treasure for someone else. Especially in light of the tragedy that has taken place in Maui, in that whole community of Nine. And I think when we are in a position, which this district really is, to be able to offer up to those that are in other comrades in arms in the fire suppression business, to help another agency, a group who may not at this moment in time able to respond in a nature that they are accustomed to because of the lack of equipment. And I think if we take the attitude that everything that we have, we should get a monetary reward, I think the taxpayer has entrusted into this board and the district a sense of honor, a sense of best practices, sense of being able to help wherever we can, no matter whether it's residents in our district or a resident somewhere else that may be in need. So I see this as an opportunity for this particular district, especially when we don't need the truck anymore. It has outlived our use of this because we bought some more trucks. And to be a solid aid and help to another fire department, whether it's in Maui, whether it's in La Honda, whether it's up in Napa, wherever we can. And I think taxpayer money is taxpayer money, whether it's in this district or whether it's in Maui. Everyone wants the best bang for their buck, and I think the best use of a particular resource. And I think, if we were to sell it and get money for it, okay, what are we gonna do with the money? You know, we can put it in our coffers, wait for another opportunity somewhere to buy another truck, or we can be, help, and really a blessing to some other community that is without because of a, tragedy that they didn't call for, but it happened. Because it can happen here in our area. And, you know, because we're not prone to be free of disasters. And so at some point, we may need to, you know, reach out to other, fire agencies in our area for some assistance, you know. Right now, we don't have to, but I think we should be able to give what we can, without expecting any other kind of return. If we didn't have the resources, if it wasn't the kind of district that we have, where we have resources available to us, rather fluently, maybe we might think twice about it. But since we do have resources to make this thing happen, I think it's to our best interest to be a blessing to someone else.
Carrie?
Yeah, so I've been back and forth on this in my own mind for all the reasons mentioned in the room. And at the end of the day, I think Robert says as well, it's the honorable thing to do. It's a community in need. And I think we're in a position we should help the community in need. And so I don't downplay or ignore any of the comments made and the reasons for some resistance around this kind of idea, given our responsibility to our taxpayers. But we do have a community in need, and it just feels like the right thing to do. So I'm certainly supportive.
Okay, I'll take the public comment now. Michelle, do we have any hands raised? Yes.
Hi, my name's Satvik. I'm a resident of Atherton and of the fire district, and I'd just like to first thank President Karali and the two fire chiefs for organizing this donation. As a taxpayer, I'd like to say that I do respect the argument for fiscal responsibility, but I also do feel that something that really bonds us as Americans is helping each other in need, and I think this is the right thing to do to donate the fire truck. And I'm sure that if there ever was a time when our fire district or our city or county needed help, that people across our country would gladly step up to help us. So for those reasons, I do strongly think it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Satvik. Anyone else, Michelle?
That's it.
Okay, so I just have a comment because I'm in like Gary, I've kind of wrestled with all of this. But I have to say this, I have heard from people and residents, people outside the district, residents in the district, and they are very supportive of this. There's a touch point across the district to Hawaii and to Maui. Okay, whether it's Maui or any other island, but since the tragedy happened in Maui, that's the feedback I've been getting. Whether people go there on family vacations, people have a second home, or people's families live there, like those the Pacific Islander residents in our district. So I do think that there's a tie there. I think this gesture is very much appreciated. I have only heard positive comments about this. And I think this is really an issue for me, a moral imperative of a neighbor helping a neighbor. And I just want to thank the chief for this excellent staff report. I wanted to thank Chief Shapaloman as well for working with Chief Lorenzen on trying to figure out the transportation issues and not transportation, the equipment issues and all of that. I mean, we can always learn from, the past and experiences and things like that. But Chief, thank you for an excellent report. I think you encapsulated this really well. I also want to thank Rudy Torres, who was so kind to, just work with you and the mechanic over at Maui Fire Department, which I think is really important because I think he did a lot of work during the CZU lightning fire when Director Jones was the board president, and we were sending, I think, a couple of large equipment pieces there for Boulder Creek and Ben Lomond. And so Robert's been through this with something similar to this. even if just within our area. I also want to, I think it's important to know that this shipping issue was a big enough issue that caught the attention of the San Mateo County Harbor District Board, and that's why we were able to get in touch with Madison. And the chief has been in touch with them, has been working with them and exploring all the options, and they're actually being very helpful too in recommending that we talk to another shipping company to look at because of the logistics of shipping. So Chief, thank you for being involved with that as well. This is not just one director's, initiative. This is something that I've heard very positive feedback from the community. They want this to happen. They're glad that we can do something like this, and not just here, but all over the county. So I actually support moving forward with this, and with that, I'll make a motion to authorize the fire chief to donate an out-of-service engine to the Maui Fire Department.
Second.
Okay,
Can I make a comment?
sure.
I was called this morning about an article that appeared, and I was asked why we donated a fire truck to Maui, and I said it was on our agenda, but I mean, this kind of soured me a little bit. I read all the arguments and everything, and this article appearing looks like we already voted and donated the equipment.
Yeah, I think that was a mistake on their part, because John Johnston issued a press release and that was not in there, so I think that was an error on the.
Well, for you, it's got some really nice press on it.
Well, it's not about me, Rob,
Well,
so I'm
there's your
sorry.
picture on the front page there.
They put that there.
Okay, all right, I mean,
So,
let's continue.
So we got a first, a
Unbelievable.
motion and a second.
yeah, so I just
Yeah,
wanna
let's
make
continue.
one, more comment and recognize that Chief Chapel-Homan sent, a letter to the board about, his support for this donation too. And I just wanna make it very clear that this is not about me. So I'm sorry that Director Solano thinks that, which is very incorrect. So there is a motion and a second. Any other comment, Michelle? Jeff?
Yeah, I just, again, I explained why I'm not gonna vote for this, but just as a reminder, while I think Maui needs help and deserves help, we have the federal government there bringing billions of dollars of relief to Maui. And at some point, Maui would get funds to replace its engines and all of that from the federal government. So, again, I think to have our taxpayers stepping in when the federal government would do exactly the same thing, I just think is wasteful and unnecessary.
Roll call, please, Michelle.
Director Bernstein,
Nay.
Director Bloom,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Nay,
and Director Crawley.
Aye, so that motion carries. Thank you. So Chief, you have your authorization to move forward with this. Thank you. Okay, going back to the
Could I
regular,
just ask the chief though,
Sure.
when this is all done, could you summarize what we actually ended up doing in terms of shipping and all of
Sure.
that?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
okay, so then we'll move to, back to the regular agenda, item number 4. Adopt a resolution to ratify the successor agreement between the Menlo Park Fire Protection District and the San Mateo County Firefighters IAFF Local 2400 District 10. So I don't know, Francine or the chief?
Francine. Help.
Yes, good evening, Board of Directors. So this item is for a successor MOU for District 10, which is our biggest group here at the district. The district provides Eddie Kreisberg, a law firm, to begin negotiations with District 10. And we started those negotiations in February, and we commenced with a contingent tentative agreement on June 22nd of this year, which was one day prior to expiration of the contract. Per the Board of Directors Policy Manual, we sunshine the red line MOU on the district's website for 30 days, and that expired September 14th. And so now we're bringing that red line MOU to the board in open session for approval. The the district's negotiation team met with the District 10 in good faith bargaining, and we had 8 productive meetings before coming to a tentative agreement. And on page 2 of the agenda report, I've included a table of that highlights the economic items that were updated in this memorandum of understanding, as well as the fiscal impact, which for the 3-year agreement totals approximately $3.9 million.
Okay, thank you. Any comments about this? Gary?
I just have one comment, just mentioning that the staff report shows the sunshine period was August 15th, 2023, expiring on August 14th, 2023, which is obviously a typo and consistent with what was just shared. So I think I'm correct to say, your verbal report here of the sunshine period was accurate. It has been sunshine for the full 30 days.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Okay, any other comments or questions? And then is there a motion to ratify the successor agreement between the Menlo Park Fire Protection District and the San Mateo County Firefighters, IAFF Local 2400 District 10?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Oops,
Moved
moved by
by-
the same time.
Moved by Director Jones, seconded by Director Solano. So I heard him first. Thanks, Gary.
Next time, Gary.
Okay, any public comment, Michelle? Okay, roll call, please.
Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Bloom?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Aye.
Director Crawley?
Aye, so that motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Francine, and thank you, Chief, and please thank Eddie Kreisberg for us. Okay, then we'll move to item 5, which is adopt a resolution approving salary and benefit changes for management and confidential unrepresented personnel. Francine?
I'm actually gonna take it.
Okay.
And the next 3 items are all somewhat related, but I'll take them one at a time. This one here is making a recommendation. We have 2 groups that are unrepresented, chief officers and the management and confidential unrepresented personnel, which is what we're addressing here right now. We have gotten through negotiations with all of our bargaining units. Obviously, negotiations are an ongoing process with others whose contracts are expiring. But our recommendation with this staff report here is that we grant a cost of living adjustment raise for this group in the amount of 4.5%. That is the average of the 2 COLAs that ASME and District 10 of IFF received, and also a small increase in the healthcare benefit for this group for the amount is in item 2 there. The increase is by approximately 6.9% over what would have normally been granted to this group had we not made any change. So this is still inside of that range of what was granted to the other bargaining groups, and is fair and reasonable. We will, the primary purpose of coming to the board right now is we have open enrollment. We want to allow the employees to have some information on what their healthcare benefit or CAFE plan amount is going to be. Both of these increases will take effect on January 1st of 2024. Anything else I missed? And just for transparency, as I'd like to make sure we are aware, this one here has benefits our current administrative services director, who is involved in the writing of the staff report, but I've fully reviewed it. And again, like I said, this is fair and reasonable benefit in light of the contracts that we've had with IFF and ASME. With that, I will take any questions.
I'll open it up for questions from the directors.
I would just.
Oh, do you have a,
Francine Spelling.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna mention that because this group isn't a collective bargaining group and they're not, eligible to bargain over benefits, we did do a survey, a confidential survey to all of the members. And I believe by our counts, every single member the survey with the exception of Chief and I regarding benefits that were important to them. And the two highest ranked ones are the ones that the chief is bringing forward, which is the general wage increase as well as the medical benefit.
Any questions by the board? Chuck?
I just was curious if we were gonna see the hard copy of this, or are we approving the agreement without actually reading it?
Yeah, so this is approving not the agreement, but a resolution similar to what the board did last year. And then what we're going to do, and because we kind of tried to do it early is for the open enrollment period, but then what we're gonna do is work on incorporating the resolution language from 2021 with this one and updating it and getting the board a red line and bringing that back to the board before the end of the year.
I see, okay, and is that true of the next one also?
Yes,
Okay,
true with the next one.
thank you.
So all you're agreeing to right now is just the increases that we talked about. You'll have the ability to approve and review the version before we make any of those changes.
Yeah, because you want to talk about open enrollment?
Sure, I had mentioned the open enrollment part,
Okay,
which is, we're in it right now.
right,
That's
so it just
exact-
opened.
It just opened
Yeah.
on Monday and it closes, I believe, October 13th.
Okay, thank you. Gary, any comments?
No.
Any public comment? Michelle, hands raised? Okay, any last comments from directors? If not, is there a motion to approve the salary and benefit changes for management and confidential unrepresented personnel?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Director Jones, seconded by Director Bloom. Roll call, please.
Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Bloom?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Aye.
Director Crawley?
Aye. So that motion carries. Thank you, Francine, and thank you, Chief Lorenzen. So we're on to item 6, which is to adopt a resolution approving salary and benefit changes for unrepresented chief officers. Francine and.
This is me again, and this one will be quicker because it is basically all of the explanations that we just gave with for the unrepresented folks, except applied to our chief officer groups, which has 6 unrepresented chief officers. One of those positions is currently vacant. And then again, as far as disclosures goes, this will also increase their pay effective January 1st by 4.5% and give them that 6.9% increase on CAFE plan. A portion of this will affect my contract, not the COLA piece, but the CAFE plan increase will impact it since my contract is tied to the benefits portion of this. Anything else I need to add? Okay. So, and everything else, basically the explanations were the same. So with that, I will take questions.
Any questions or comments, Chuck? Rob?
Nope.
Gary? Robert?
No.
Any public comment, Michelle? Okay, this is moved by Director Jones, seconded by Director Bloom. Roll call, please.
Hold on. Director, oh, wait.
Who did the motion?
Yeah, did I do
that? Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, I got the other, I just got the other last item. Sorry.
Yeah.
Is there a motion to approve the salary and benefit changes for unrepresented chief officers? I'm so sorry.
Do it again, I so moved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Director Jones moved. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Director Bloom. Roll call, please.
Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Bloom?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Aye.
Director Crawley?
Aye, so that motion carries unanimously. On to item 7, adopt a resolution approving the master pay schedule for all district employees.
This
So
is
Francine, are you taking this too, Chief?
Francine.
Francine, okay.
So this is something we bring to the board to comply with the PEARL, Government Code Section 20636, where the district's pay schedule has to be approved in an open session. These changes typically go on the consent calendar, but because some of them were on the agenda, we put it on the regular agenda. So what this is including is the fire chief had a change after his review for his annual salary. That will be included in this master pay schedule. It will also include the changes that were effective in the IFF contract. And those would be the 5% increase that the board approved. as well as equity increase for fire inspector 1 and 2, which is an additional 5%. So those are the 3 items. This does not include the changes that were just approved for unrepresented management confidential or chief officers. We'll come back to the board with those changes.
Any questions for Chuck?
I'm asking this just to confirm, but I think this is the answer. What we're about to vote on has no compensation changes whatsoever in it. It's just reflecting what we've already passed and approved.
Yes.
Ron?
No, thank you.
Gary?
No.
Robert?
No,
Any public comment, Michelle? Okay, is there a motion to approve the master pay schedule for all district employees?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call please.
Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Bloom?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Aye.
Director Crawley?
Aye, so that motion carries. Thank you. So item 8, which is to approve a proclamation to present to the town of Atherton at its 100-year centennial celebration event. Michelle, did you, the chief, I know that the report was prepared by Michelle. Approved it, okay, chief?
Sure.
You wanna-
I will take it. We have, obviously Atherton is celebrating their 100th anniversary this weekend. Am I in the right thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Item number 8.
Suddenly I was on the facilities report, sorry. I'm like, oh. Anyway, we have a proclamation we would love to present to the city on the occasion of their 100th anniversary, and so we're looking for the board to approve that. I'm not seeing the proclamation in here though, but,
It has not been
okay.
prepared.
Any comments?
Oh, God, if approved, staff will prepare.
Any
My
comments?
bad.
Any public comments, Michelle? Okay, roll call please.
Did we have a motion?
Oh, sorry, is there a motion to present a proclamation to the town of Atherton at its 100-year centennial celebration event?
So moved.
Moved by Director Bloom, seconded by Director Jones. Roll call please.
Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Bloom?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Aye.
Director Crawley?
Aye, so that motion carries unanimously, and we're on to item 9. This is the thing that you were just reading.
That's what I was looking at.
Discuss establishing a facilities standing committee. Chief.
It has, as we started down the path of Fire Station 1 and some other things, facilities ad hoc committee was created, and now we're recognizing, as I'm sure our council will appreciate, that this meeting's probably, the ad hoc committee is not a temporary committee, it's probably gonna have a much longer and lengthy purpose, so we are looking to have the board have a conversation about establishing a new facilities standing committee.
Okay. So this was an item that was put on this agenda from last month, so as approved by the board. Is there comment from any of the directors or questions? Gary?
Yeah, I'll just make a comment. You know, Robert's been chairing the ad hoc committee, and you know, one thing that I think has become very visible as we were working on the ad hoc committee is it's very hard to, and it's happened in the board as well, to have a discussion about one particular facility without considering the lifespan and the usability of all the other facilities. And so the ad hoc committee, you know, while it was predominantly focused around the station 1 rebuild and what the possibilities are there, it's, as I mentioned, it's difficult to look at that in isolation of, well, what does it mean for 5? What does it mean for Station 3? What does it mean for the task force warehouse out in East Palo Alto? And so I think it makes sense that says, yeah, facilities is one of our major expenses. I would assume probably our second major expense behind our employee costs. And it just makes sense to me that this be a standing committee into the future that's doing both short-term and long-range planning for our facilities and providing oversight to staff relative to the useful life reports and the long-term plans that will ultimately include, you know, kind of how to finance projects as well down the road, and making sure that we're thinking about the capital needs over the long term as well. We make decisions every year about surplus capital and what we're going to do with it, whether we, use it to pay down unfunded liabilities and such. And part of that discussion ultimately needs to be, well, how does that money fit into our facilities plan as well? So to me, this is a logical step for the board to take, and I'd recommend that we approve the standing committee for facilities.
Robert?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion.
I called you Robert.
Establish a
Sorry.
committee. No, I'd like to make a motion to establish a committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Director Solano, seconded by Director Jones. Any other comments?
Yeah, I had just, I think this is a good idea, and I think in a sense, it replaces what the strategic planning committee was supposed to be doing back when that was created. Because as Director Bloom said, you can't look at one facility without looking at another facility, but you can't look at a facility without talking about how many people you're going to have, what kinds of equipment you're going to have. Do you need a heliport? Do you need more bays for trucks and so forth? Do you need something for drones? I mean, so in a sense, it's facilities, but it's broader than that. It's just kind of the physical needs of the fire district. So whatever we call it, I think it's not important, but I think we should be talking about the future right now.
I think since this is a long-term, and how you define long-term, tomorrow can be a long-term, but I think based upon the conversation that we have been talking about, I mean, it's not a 5-year project. I mean, this thing is going on for the next 10 years in some form of fashion, before everything is built out. So, rather than having a group to come and go, every year or every other year, it may be important. It's so important to be able to kind of have continuity there for the long haul. And I think having a group there established to continue to think about and help the chief to plan for this, I think is very important.
Well, I just want to thank Director Jones and Director Bloom for the great work they've done on the ad hoc committee. And I'm so glad that this is, probably going to be approved to be a standing committee. And I think this helps the chief as well. And because, you're kind of new still, right, in terms of, all of the 3 stations being built in 9 years is a pretty big accomplishment, I think. And I think that with your leadership and the leadership of Director Jones and Director Bloom, we can continue to move forward, good cohesive planning for the future. So, roll call, well, do we have any public comment, Michelle? Okay, roll call, please.
Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Bloom?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Aye.
Director Crawley?
Aye, so that motion carries. So with that, also, Chief and Michelle, that means there's no longer an ad hoc committee. This standing committee will replace that, and it'll still be populated by Director Jones and Director Bloom. So they'll just continue their work. Okay, item
I
10.
have a comment.
Sure.
This is a little bit self-serving, but I have been on the board for quite a while, and I just would like to note for the record
That could be your note.
I wanted to note for the record that I have no committee assignments, and I think that's probably that's undoubtedly intentional, but I just want to note that I have none, and some people on the board have 3 committee assignments, and I don't think that's a reasonable thing to be doing. But that's all I'll say about it now.
Thank you. So item 10, which is to approve a resolution authorizing the fire, sorry.
No, we already did that.
I'm sorry, I didn't cross it off. We'll go to the proposed agenda items. 11, from Director Solano, considering hiring a vendor to transcribe the August board meeting.
I'd like to withdraw that, Michelle.
Okay. Okay, then we'll go
No
on.
need to waste time anymore.
But on that item, I had something I wanted to bring up.
on this item,
No, on the proposed agenda items.
well, where there's only one proposed agenda item on here, so
But I
would you,
thought
oh,
this
you want a future agenda item?
Yes.
Okay, oh, sorry, yes, please.
I mean, this is the time when we
Yes,
propose things,
yeah.
right?
Oh, is it? Oh, I also have something for you.
Okay, Chuck?
I would like to know, and I think it would require some sort of report or something, but I was curious what the policy of the district is with respect to access to the district's email system. Who is entitled to be in it, on it, able to use it, and so forth? Obviously, board members can use it, staff members, but I was curious what vendors, what contractors, who it is, what the policy is about access to the email system. I don't think you can answer that tonight, but that's something that I would like to at least have a report on.
So do you want to put that on the?
I'd like that on the
next one,
agenda, yeah.
Okay, so, just a report on, who has access to the fire districts.
Do we have a written policy about that? Who's entitled to have access to it?
So, so we can vote on that. So would you like to make a motion to put that on?
I'd like to make a motion to receive a report from the staff on our policy regarding access to our email system.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any public comment, Michelle? Roll call, please.
Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Bloom?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Aye.
Director Crawley?
Aye, that motion carries. Director Solano, you have a
Yep, thank you,
proposed
yep.
agenda item?
I was at the CSDA as yourself, and I sat in one of the study groups involving LAFCO, and I had some ideas for us as a fire district. Actually, 3 areas. As Virginia knows, Weekend Acres has always been an issue. We're us trying to get the funding out of there and back and forth between Menlo Park and the county. And I think that would be something I would like the staff to research for us and see if we can in fact bring that in front of LAFCO and have a solution to that. You know,
You want to put it on the agenda?
I'd like to put it on the agenda for us for a discussion. Then if the board feels we should go forward with it, then have staff, direct staff to prepare as a report for us. Yeah. And then second is Stanford Hills area. The second area,
Yes, similar to the.
similar to Weekend Acres. We respond there. And they've never, we respond there. I don't know what the actual tax base is there and the breakdown that, but that's something I would also like to explore for a tax base for us. And then thirdly is the jurisdictional issue of the rescue rights between the Dumbarton Bridge and south. Now, we border Bellhaven and EPA, and I would like LAFCO to come up with the determination of who has the ultimate rescue responsibility for south of the Dumbarton Bridge. I know the Harbor District, Coast Guard, Navy, Sheriff's Office, and us. So I'd like LAFCO to rule on that as to who has the ultimate jurisdiction for rescue there.
Well, that's fine.
You're talking
I just
water
wanted-
rescue, Rob, just to be clear. You're talking the waterways, not like,
Well, we end up responding as Boat 77 or something. We go out there all the time.
yeah, so you're talking the waterway
had-
rescue.
Yeah, and we've had, I think it's since 1989, Fire District has assumed those responsibilities. And I think that's something that LAFCO can rule on. So we could get, I don't know, funding from the county or from whoever the original jurisdictions are. So those are the 3 things that I'd like to be put on the agenda for discussion.
Okay, well, let me just make it very clear that the Harbor District does not have jurisdiction over the Dumbarton Bridge. The sphere of influence has nothing to do with this far away. So basically, I just want to make that very clear, that the Harbor District has no jurisdiction.
Well, not according to what the Harbor District's purpose is.
The sphere of
On the
influence,
website, it says you have ultimate, well, the Harbor District has the ultimate responsibility for all the waterways in San Mateo County.
within our sphere of influence. So this is not within our sphere of influence, it's been made very, very clear. So anyway.
That's something that we can discuss as a agenda item. Right, Steve?
Well, I mean, we can put, so there are two items here as I see it. One is the unincorporated areas annexing Weekend Acres and Stanford Hills, right? You wanna put that on there to maybe talk to LAFCO to look at how they would come into the fire district, is that correct?
Stanford Hills,
Right, and
Weekend Acres,
yeah.
and the jurisdictional issues involving the Dunbar
Right, that's
Bridge.
fine, but if we're looking at the annexation piece, I was gonna divide it into two items. One, and put Stanford
Well,
Hills and
These
Weekend
would be
Acres into
the,
one.
these would be the three areas that I think we should discuss involving LAFCO. Now, the chief and I have discussed auto aid, mutual aid, things like that. And those are basically agreements through our dispatch system. So that really wouldn't be something to try to get additional revenue. But these things, like Stanford Hills, Weekend Acres, and the jurisdictional issues with the Dunbar Bridge, if we're going to be doing rescues there as Boat 77, well, maybe we should be compensated by the county or Harbor District for doing those rescues.
Okay, so I still see it as two issues. One with the first one with the
Tax aspect.
tax aspect for Weekend Acres and Stanford Hills, right, or, yeah, Stanford Hills. So we wanna put that on there. So I would say that is one, and then the second issue is the jurisdictional boundaries for the water rescue team out. to
Who has the
west.
ultimate jurisdiction responsibility south of the Dunbar?
Okay, so wait, Michelle, oh, no, go ahead, Bob.
Well, kind of piggyback a little bit on what Rob is asking for. It'd be nice to have boundaries of where San Mateo County ends and where Santa Clara, because even though East Palo Alto is in San Mateo County, once you go out, I don't know, 75 yards into the ocean, you're in Santa Clara County. You Palo Alto is all up in, I mean, that's Santa Clara County. So it would be nice to have a mapping of that so it can be really clear of when you say south of Dunbar Bridge, as far as I know, it stops, right there at the borderline of East Palo Alto, down at Cooley Landing, 75 yards out.
Okay, so that would be,
Can I ask a question?
yes, please, Gary.
So I think what Rob's raising is an important topic without question. I'm just confused over what we're going to do at the next meeting if we put this on the agenda. Are we discussing the possibility of making a request to LAFCO to do an evaluation of these three particular zones that were mentioned? Or are we trying to formulate an opinion of our board that we're then going to present to LAFCO? And I'm not quite sure. I'm just trying to make sure I understand what it is we're putting on the agenda. And hopefully, maybe the chief already knows what his staff work needs to be to support it, but I suspect there might be confusion there as well.
Rob, do you want to clarify?
Well, yeah, I have, and this is supposed to be proposed items, so if they're going to be as a proposed item, then they need to go as a proposed item. Right, Stephen? And we can't discuss it further until it's a proposed item.
That is correct. As I understand it, you should now be discussing whether to put something on the agenda for discussion, not to discuss it right now.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm not trying to discuss it. I'm trying to ask simply what it is we're putting on the agenda
right.
to discuss in the future. Is it we're discussing the board's perspective on it, or we're discussing making a request to LAFCO to make an evaluation?
Both.
Okay, that's fine.
Both.
Okay.
Okay, so you want to make that motion, that first one, Rob? you wanna make that motion then? to
Yeah,
move
I'll make
on
that motion.
For the first one to.
I'll make
We
that
would do them
motion.
all together. Yeah, do them all
Well,
together.
I think that the water rescue jurisdictional line, the jurisdictional boundary is a different one from the tax issue for these.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Rob?
I'll make a motion for those 3 items.
Well, one is not regarding the tax issue.
Well, it's involving revenue to the fire district, so I think it is a tax issue.
Well, then, okay, so
That's
then
why,
it's a revenue
that's why we're
issue.
gonna have LAFCO, or if we decide to go to LAFCO, for LAFCO to make a determination if the fire district should be compensated for the rescues. And we shouldn't discuss any more of it, other than put it on the agenda as a
No, I
proposed item.
understand, I'm just trying to understand, like Gary, what it is exactly you wanna put on. So if it's a revenue issue, then maybe what we'll put on the agenda for a proposed agenda item is to discuss those 3 things from a revenue perspective.
Right.
Okay. So you wanna make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
What's your motion? Well, I'm not
I
making the
like-
motion,
I-
so that's why I think he's making the
Go
motion.
slow for me too, because I'm completely confused right now.
Are you,
I am.
are you ready?
I am.
Okay. We'd like the board to review as a proposed agenda item, on these jurisdictional questions and tax-based questions involving Stanford Hills, Weekend Acres, and the Jurisdictional Revenue Authority for rescues from south of the Dumbarton Bridge involving Bellhaven and EPA and the fire district.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, any public comment, Michelle?
No.
Okay, any director comments? Okay, roll call, please.
Director Bernstein? Director Bloom?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Solana?
Aye.
Director Crawley?
Aye, so that motion carries. And now we're on to item 12, which is reports and requests. Committee reports, HR, Robert,
No report.
okay, Finance Committee, Rob?
Yeah, Gary and I met, we discussed utilizing the services of a financial management advisory group to evaluate funding options for Station One and other campus rebuilding. We're gonna have a facilities committee that Gary and Robert are gonna be on. So there's your mission if you decide to take it.
What's that?
To, for Station One campus and to provide a financial resources for such.
Well, that will balance it with finance. Balance it to you, get that.
Let me jump in. I think this is probably a logical extension for finance committee to take up the financing needs as presented by the facilities committee. So the facilities committee should tee up what it is that's needed. And then the finance committee should be taking up the action of how are we going to evaluate and consider those financial requirements for the district, which would logically include at the right time, hiring a third-party advisor. Our investment advisor, just for clarity, deals with investment of our funds. They don't deal with financing of projects that we might be doing. So I think eventually we'll probably want to, at the right time, bring on a third party to do that. But I think logically that belongs in the finance committee.
What were you saying? I think the finance committee, correct me if I'm wrong, Gary, would be setting the parameters for the dollar amount based on projection out of what the development will.
No, not really. I think facilities is good to find the scope of the project and the financial envelope that project fits within. And then the finance committee's role is determining, okay, how's the best way to finance that?
I think that's what I said, but in a different.
Oh, okay. That's not what I heard, so sorry.
That's okay. Sometimes tongue get twisted, sorry.
Kind of like it'll go to finance and then you'll come up with some type of facilities plan and then we'll work it out. How's it?
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Can I just?
That's all I have. Gary, you want to add anything? Finance?
No, we're good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, I hope you won't lose sight, kind of maybe in between those 2 steps of preparing a capital budget, because there's once facilities talks about needs, then I think translating that into a capital budget and then go to the financing of it makes sense.
Anything else for finance? Okay, thank you, Rob and Gary and Chuck.
Nope.
Liaison reports, Town of Atherton, Gary?
They did not meet during the past month, so their next meeting, I believe, is Wednesday, tomorrow. But I could be wrong on that date, so don't quote me.
Okay, East Palo Robert?
Nothing.
Menlo Park, Chuck?
I don't have anything.
San Mateo County, Rob?
No, don't have anything.
The San Mateo Pre-Hospital Emergency Medical JPA, Rob?
They canceled the meeting.
Are you surprised?
I'm not, I mean, you know, they canceled the meeting, okay.
The ad hoc committee reports, facility, Robert?
Oh, excuse me.
Oh, sure.
I want to throw something to the chief. Chief, it looks like the pre-medical or AMR, the county wants to raise communication fees to AMR for dispatch. That was the read I got when in fact, they were supposed to have some type of Zoom call on this. And I haven't gotten any word yet, but the county wants to raise the dispatch fees on the pre-medical. Did you hear that
For the
For
cities and counties, for the cities and the fire districts, right?
Well,
Is that what you're
they
talking
put
about?
they put that on hold with the fire districts, but now they're trying to do the AMR thing.
Oh, I haven't heard that.
Their challenge with AMR will be is that they have a contract till 2029 that stipulates the exact amount that they're gonna pay for dispatch services. So.
That's what I was told.
Yeah, no, I know.
Don't kill the messenger.
That's right. The county absolutely did want to increase AMR's costs until they realized they couldn't contractually do it.
Well, maybe that's why they can't, maybe that's why I haven't heard anything from the Zoom call. Because they're locked into what they have. Okay, that's all I have on that. Thanks.
Thanks. Speaking of dispatch services, Chuck,
Well, we're going to have a meeting, I think, of the committee with the chief to talk about it. But I think it obviously tonight, we talked about the importance of this and that we may need to take a whole new look at how this is done and how effective it is and what technologies might be available and so forth. Because it doesn't make sense that we have this high-tech, very advanced dispatch center that's kind of number 2 down the list. And all the calls are going into the little funky police departments around here first, where we have no idea what kind of phone service they have and how many people are answering the phone, and the whole thing just doesn't make sense. So,
okay,
anyway,
so that's to be
we'll have
scheduled,
next
right?
meet, yes, and we'll have something to say.
Can I make a comment on that? I would just encourage the committee in your meeting to be as specific as you can about what data you're looking for in the data project the chief's working on to support what you're trying to do in that ad hoc committee. Because data kind of outlines what's actually happening, and as I think the chief accurately discussed earlier, there's lots of different ways to slice and dice the data. And so having some clear requirements as to what you're trying to measure so that we can then use that as material to support what the dispatch committee is doing is actually important. So I just encourage that ad hoc committee to spend a little time on the data.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Okay, item 15, reports and requests of directors. Director Bloom,
Nothing from me.
Director Jones.
Actually, I have one thing. I would just encourage everybody, if you can, the 100th centennial for Atherton, 11 to 3 on the 24th. I know the council there and staff there have put a tremendous amount of effort into that event. And so, if you can make it out there, I'm sure they'll appreciate seeing it.
Thank you, Gary. Director Jones.
No, what time is it?
Director Bernstein.
I have nothing.
Director Swan.
I've said enough, thank you.
Okay, finally, item 16, quick
Oh,
present.
wait, can I quick,
Sure.
Director Jones, did you get your facilities ad hoc report?
No, I had no report.
He had no.
Oh, you have no, okay, thank you.
Okay, President's report really quickly. On Saturday, I attended an Area 41 neighborhood meet and greet that was organized by residents of this area, which is unincorporated West Menlo Park, and also Lynn Ramlett, who was instrumental in getting this
organized was there, and they had a great turnout, and it was really about community preparedness within the neighborhood, so neighbors got to see each other, which was great. I also had, as the chief said, we had a meeting with the CEO of Repower, who provided these. And I'm glad that we're working with them and that that we bought these for our staff, and hopefully we'll look into how these might help the community at large. So thanks for working on that, Chief, and thanks for continuing the work on that. And then again, I'm gonna kind of second what Gary says. Atherton's 100th anniversary celebration is on Sunday, and we're gonna be giving a proclamation on behalf of the fire district.
What time is that again?
From 11 to 3.
No, the proclamation.
Oh, 2:55. There's a whole program at the very end with proclamations and other.
He says 24.
Yeah, Sunday, September 24th.
That's this Sunday.
Yes. Yes.
And it is
That's
at
all.
the town center.
Yeah, at the town center. Okay, so there's nothing left except for public comment number 2. Michelle, any public comment? Then I'll close public comment number 2, and we'll adjourn the meeting to October 17th, 2023 at Station 4. And we're adjourned at 9:53, Michelle. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Gary.
See you, Gary.